Raymond Jackson's palm print grants him access to the Orion Fertility Center. The massive complex of gleaming silver towers looms before him, a testament to alien architecture and the last hope for a dying species. As the doors slide open, Raymond steps into a world where human genetic material is the most valuable commodity in the galaxy. Dr. Xalax, the lead Orion scientist, greets Raymond with an expression that can only be described as desperate relief. "Mr. Jackson, welcome to Zeta Prime. We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." Raymond nods, his skepticism evident. "I'm here as requested, but I still don't understand why I was chosen for this program." Dr. Xalax's luminescent skin pulses with a soft blue glow. "Follow me. There's much to explain, and time is of the essence." They walk through sterile corridors lined with advanced medical equipment. Rows of incubation chambers fill entire rooms, each carefully monitored by Orion technicians. The air hums with the sound of life support systems and data processors. In a private conference room, Dr. Xalax turns to Raymond, his silver eyes reflecting a mix of hope and desperation. "Mr. Jackson, our situation is dire. The Orion species faces extinction due to a severe genetic defect. Our males have become completely infertile." Raymond's eyes widen. "That's impossible. How?" "We don't fully understand the cause," Dr. Xalax interrupts, "but we've discovered a solution. Human DNA, specifically yours, is uniquely compatible with our physiology. It can produce viable hybrid offspring." The weight of this revelation settles on Raymond's shoulders. He's not just here as a scientist, he's here as a savior. A door opens and a stunningly beautiful Orion female enters. Her blue skin seems to shimmer, and her silver eyes capture Raymond's attention immediately. "This is Raya," Dr. Xalax introduces. "She'll be your liaison during your stay." Raya steps forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. "It's an honor to meet you, Raymond. Your role here is crucial. You'll be providing regular genetic samples and assisting in optimizing our fertilization process." Raymond's mind races. The ethical implications are staggering. I'm not sure I can do this. It's one thing to study genetics, but to actively participate in creating a hybrid species." Dr. Xalax's expression darkens. "Without human assistance, the Orion race will cease to exist within 3 generations. You're one of only 5 humans selected for this program, chosen for your exceptional genetic profiles." Raya places a hand on Raymond's arm, her touch sending an unexpected shiver through him. "We understand your hesitation, but please consider what's at stake. An entire species' future rests in your hands." As Raymond grapples with the enormity of the situation, he's unaware of the growing threat back on Earth. A group of human extremists, having learned of the Orion breeding program, begins to plot. They view this interspecies collaboration as a threat to human genetic purity and are determined to sabotage the Orion Fertility Center at any cost. Raymond looks from Dr. Xalax to Raya, then to the labs beyond. The fate of the Orion species hangs in the balance, and he holds the key to their survival. With a deep breath, he realizes that his decision here, in this alien world of Zeta Prime, will shape the future of not one, but 2 species. Raymond's gaze shifted between Dr. Xalax and Raya, the weight of their expectation palpable in the sterile air of the Orion Fertility Center. His mind raced, processing the enormity of what they were asking of him. The fate of an entire species hung in the balance, and he held the key to their survival. With a deep breath, Raymond straightened his shoulders and met Dr. Xalax's silver eyes. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady, despite the turmoil in his gut. "I'll participate in the program." Relief washed over Dr. Xalax's luminescent features. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Your decision will save countless lives." Raya's hand brushed Raymond's arm, sending another involuntary shiver through him. "We are eternally grateful," she said, her melodious voice filled with genuine emotion. The next day, Raymond found himself in a state-of-the-art laboratory, surrounded by equipment he'd never seen before. Dr. Xalax guided him through the complex process of genetic sample collection and preparation. "This chamber," Dr. Xalax explained, gesturing to a sleek, pod-like structure, is designed specifically for human donors. It ensures optimal conditions for sample collection. Raymond nodded, trying to maintain a professional demeanor despite the intimate nature of the procedure. He stepped into the chamber, following Dr. Zalak's instructions carefully. The process was quick and painless, but Raymond couldn't shake the surreal feeling of providing genetic material for an alien species. As the days passed, Raymond fell into a routine. Each morning he'd arrive at the lab, provide his sample, and then work alongside the Orion scientists to refine the fertilization process. Raya was a constant presence, her expertise and dedication impressing Raymond more each day. During their breaks, Raymond and Raya found themselves drawn into conversations that extended far beyond their work. Raya's curiosity about Earth was insatiable, and Raymond found himself sharing stories of his home planet with increasing enthusiasm. "Tell me about your oceans," Raya asked one day, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "Are they truly as vast as our data suggests?" Raymond smiled, recalling childhood memories of beach vacations. "They're incredible. The way the sunlight dances on the waves, the sound of the surf. It's like nothing else in the universe." Raya leaned closer, her blue skin shimmering under the lab's lights. "I hope to see them someday," she said softly. As weeks turned into months, Raymond's work began to yield results. The first batch of hybrid embryos showed remarkable viability, their unique genetic structures pulsing with life in the incubation chambers. Dr. Xalax called for a celebration, gathering the entire team in the fertility center's main atrium. The room buzzed with excitement, Orion scientists chattering in their melodic language as they toasted their success. Raymond stood at the edge of the crowd, still feeling slightly out of place in this alien world. Raya appeared at his side, offering him a glass filled with a shimmering, pale blue liquid. "It's fermented starfruit," she explained, "a delicacy on our world." As they both reached for the glass, their hands touched. The contact sent a jolt through Raymond, and he found himself lost in Raya's gaze. For a moment, the noise of the celebration faded away, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of charged silence. The moment was broken by the arrival of a new face. A human man, tall and broad-shouldered, approached them with a friendly smile. "You must be Raymond Jackson," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus Stern, the newest recruit to the program. I've heard great things about your work here." Raymond shook Marcus's hand, noting the firm grip and the keen intelligence in the other man's eyes. "Welcome to Zeta Prime, Marcus. It's good to have another human face around here." As the celebration continued, Raymond found himself torn between conversations with Marcus and stolen glances at Raya. The Orion female seemed to be watching him more closely, her attention to his needs becoming increasingly apparent. The following weeks brought new challenges. Dr. Xalax, concerned about maintaining genetic diversity, proposed a rotation system where each human donor would provide genetic material to multiple Orion females. The suggestion hit Raymond like a physical blow. The thought of other Orion females receiving his genetic material, of Raya potentially being paired with other human donors, stirred an unexpected jealousy within him. As Raymond grappled with his conflicting emotions, he failed to notice the subtle changes occurring in the lab. Marcus, always eager to help, had begun assisting with sample processing and incubation monitoring. What Raymond didn't see were the minor adjustments Marcus made to the equipment, the almost imperceptible alterations to genetic samples. One evening, as Raymond was preparing to leave the lab, Raya approached him. "Raymond," she said, her voice hesitant, "would you join me for a meal? There's a viewing platform in the upper levels of the facility. I thought you might enjoy seeing the stars of Zeta Prime." Raymond's heart raced at the invitation. He knew he should maintain professional boundaries, but the pull he felt towards Raya was becoming harder to ignore. "I'd like that," he heard himself say. As they made their way to the viewing platform, Raymond's mind whirled with questions. What did this mean for his role in the program? How could he reconcile his growing feelings for Raya with his mission to save her species? And why couldn't he shake the feeling that something was off about Marcus and the recent changes in the lab? The doors to the viewing platform slid open, revealing a breathtaking vista of Zeta Prime's night sky. Raya's hand found Raymond's in the darkness, and he realized that his journey on this alien world was just getting started. The fate of the Orion species still hung in the balance, but now his own heart was at stake as well. As Raymond and Raya stood on the viewing platform, gazing at the celestial tapestry of Zeta Prime's night sky, their moment of connection was interrupted by a chime from Raymond's communicator. Dr. Zalax's voice crackled through, urgency evident in his tone. "Mr. Jackson, your presence is required in the main laboratory immediately. We've made a significant breakthrough." Raymond exchanged a glance with Raya, their shared disappointment palpable. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I have to go." Raya nodded, understanding etched in her silver eyes. "Of course, the work we do here is paramount." They made their way back to the lab, the peaceful moment on the viewing platform now a distant memory. As they entered, Raymond was struck by the palpable excitement in the air. Dr. Zalax stood before a large holographic display, his luminescent skin pulsing with an intense blue glow. "Excellent. You're here," Dr. Zalax said, beckoning Raymond closer. "Our initial batch of hybrid embryos has shown remarkable viability. We're ready to move forward with an accelerated program." Raymond's heart raced as he absorbed the implications of this news. Accelerated program? What exactly does that mean? Dr. Zalax's expression was a mix of enthusiasm and willpower. The Orion High Council has approved an intensified schedule for genetic sample collection. We'll need more frequent contributions from both you and Mr. Stern. Raymond felt a wave of unease wash over him. The current schedule was already demanding, and the thought of increasing it further sent a shiver down his spine. He glanced at Raya, whose face betrayed a flicker of concern. Over the next few weeks, the new protocol took its toll. Raymond found himself spending more time in the sample collection chamber, his body struggling to keep up with the demands placed upon it. Dark circles formed under his eyes and his movements became sluggish. One evening, as Raymond stumbled out of the lab, he nearly collided with Marcus Stern. The other human steadied him with a strong grip. "Whoa there, Jackson. You're looking a bit worse for wear," Marcus said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp and assessing. Raymond managed a weak smile. "Just tired. This new schedule is intense." Marcus nodded sympathetically. "Tell me about it. But hey, we're saving an entire species, right? That's got to count for something." As Marcus walked away, Raymond couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease. There was something off about the other man's demeanor, a calculated edge beneath the friendly exterior. Raya noticed Raymond's deteriorating condition and approached Dr. Zalax in his private office. "Doctor, I'm concerned about Raymond's health. The increased sample collection is taking a severe toll on him." Dr. Zalax's expression hardened. "We cannot afford to slow down now, Raya. The fate of our entire species hangs in the balance." Undeterred, Raya took matters into her own hands. She began subtly altering Raymond's schedule, creating longer rest periods between collections. It wasn't much, but it was enough to bring some color back to Raymond's cheeks. One evening, as Raymond and Raya shared a quiet moment in an empty observation room, she turned to him, her silver eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and purpose. "Raymond, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My role here, it's more than just a scientist or liaison." Raymond leaned in, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Raya took a deep breath. "I'm next in line for the Orion throne. This mission, saving our species, it's not just scientific for me, it's deeply personal." The revelation hit Raymond like a shockwave. He stared at Raya, seeing her in a new light. The weight of responsibility she carried suddenly became clear, and his admiration for her grew exponentially. Before he could respond, an alarm blared through the facility. Raymond jumped to his feet, adrenaline cutting through his fatigue. "What's happening?" Raya's face paled. "That's the incubation chamber alert. Something's wrong with the embryos." They raced to the main laboratory, joining a crowd of panicked Orion scientists. Dr. Zalax stood before the incubation units, his luminescent skin pulsing an angry red. "The viability rates are dropping," he announced, his voice tight with frustration. "We're losing embryos at an alarming rate." As the Orion scientists scrambled to identify the cause, Raymond noticed movement in his peripheral vision. Marcus Stern was slipping away from the chaos, his expression unreadable. Acting on instinct, Raymond followed. He trailed Marcus through the winding corridors of the facility, finally catching up to him in a dimly lit storage area. "Marcus," Raymond called out, his voice echoing in the empty space. "What are you doing here?" Marcus turned, his friendly mask slipping to reveal a cold, determined expression. "Ah, Raymond, I was hoping to avoid this conversation." Raymond's mind raced, pieces falling into place. "It's you, isn't it? You're sabotaging the program." Marcus's lips curled into a humorless smile. "I prefer to think of it as course correction. Humanity has no business interfering with alien evolution, Raymond. We're part of a greater cause, the purist movement." Raymond felt his world tilt on its axis. The man he'd considered a colleague, perhaps even a friend, was actively working to destroy everything they'd built. "You don't understand what's at stake here," Raymond argued, his voice rising. "We're saving an entire species." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with fervor. "And in doing so, we're playing God. Join us, Raymond. Help us preserve the natural order." As Raymond stood there, faced with this impossible choice, the facility's security systems suddenly engaged. Sirens wailed and the sound of running footsteps echoed from the corridor. Raymond realized he was at a crossroads. His decision in this moment would shape not only his own future, but the fate of the Orion species and the course of human-alien relations. The weight of it all pressed down on him as he faced Marcus, the approaching security forces, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The weight of it all pressed down on him as he faced Marcus, the approaching security forces, and the uncertain future that lay before them. In that split second, Raymond made his choice. He lunged forward, tackling Marcus to the ground, just as the security team rounded the corner. The two men grappled on the floor, Raymond struggling to subdue his former colleague. "Restrain them both!" Dr. Zalak's voice cut through the chaos. Orion security officers swarmed around them, their iridescent uniforms shimmering in the dim light. As Raymond felt the cool touch of restraints on his wrists, he locked eyes with Dr. Zalak's. "Doctor, listen to me. Marcus has been sabotaging the program. I have evidence." Dr. Zalak's luminescent skin pulsed with a mix of surprise and anger. He gestured to the security team. "Release Mr. Jackson. Take Mr. Stern into custody for questioning." As Marcus was led away, his face a mask of cold defiance, Raymond pulled Dr. Zalak's aside. In hushed tones, he explained what he had discovered, careful to omit any mention of the broader purist movement. The Orion scientist's expression grew increasingly grave. "This is most troubling," Dr. Zalak said, his voice low. "We must conduct a full security sweep of the facility. Mr. Jackson, your discretion in this matter is appreciated. We cannot afford a panic." Raymond nodded, the adrenaline of the confrontation slowly ebbing away. As he turned to leave, he found Raya waiting for him, concern etched on her delicate features. "Raymond," she said softly, taking his hand. "Are you all right? What happened?" He opened his mouth to explain, but the words caught in his throat. How could he burden her with this knowledge, especially after her revelation about her royal lineage? Raya seemed to sense his hesitation. She squeezed his hand gently. "Come with me. There's something I want to share with you." She led him through the winding corridors of the fertility center, finally stopping before a set of ornate doors. As they slid open, Raymond's breath caught in his throat. Before them lay a vast garden filled with bioluminescent plants that pulsed with ethereal light. "This is the Harmony Garden," Raya explained, her voice tinged with reverence. "It's a sacred place for my people. I'd like to share a bonding ritual with you, if you're willing." Raymond hesitated, his mind still reeling from the events of the past hour. But as he looked into Raya's silver eyes, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He nodded, allowing her to guide him into the garden. They sat cross-legged on a soft patch of moss, surrounded by gently swaying tendrils of light. Raya took his hands in hers, her blue skin cool against his. "Close your eyes," she instructed. "Focus on your breathing. Let everything else fall away." As Raymond followed her guidance, he felt a strange sensation begin to build. It was as if a gentle current was flowing between them, their heartbeats slowly synchronizing. The bioluminescent plants around them pulsed in rhythm with their shared breaths. Time seemed to lose all meaning as they sat there, connected in a way Raymond had never experienced before. He felt Raya's presence, not just physically, but on a deeper, almost spiritual level. When he finally opened his eyes, he found her gazing at him with an intensity that made his heart race. Slowly, they leaned towards each other, the air between them charged with an electric tension. Just as their lips were about to meet, a deafening explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared as they sprang to their feet. The peaceful glow of the garden was now bathed in the harsh red of emergency lighting. The lower levels, Raya gasped, her eyes wide with fear. The incubation chambers. They raced out of the garden, the serenity of moments ago shattered by the chaos erupting around them. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Dr. Salax. "We're under attack, Urim," the Orion scientist said, his skin pulsing an angry red. "A strike team has breached our defenses. They're targeting the embryos." Raymond's mind raced. The purists. It had to be. They were making their move. Another explosion shook the building, closer this time. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridors. "Raya," Dr. Zalax barked, "we need to evacuate the viable embryos. Take a team and secure as many as you can." Raya nodded, her face set with purpose. She turned to Raymond, conflict clear in her eyes. "Go," Raymond said, squeezing her hand. "I'll help Dr. Zalax coordinate the defense." As Raya disappeared down the corridor with a team of Orion scientists, Raymond turned to Dr. Zalax. "What can I do?" Before the doctor could respond, a panicked voice came over the facility's communication system. "Emergency in the central computer hub. Someone's attempting to purge the genetic data." Dr. Zalax's eyes widened in horror. "Marcus," he hissed. "He must have escaped in the chaos." Raymond felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. If Marcus succeeded in deleting the data, months of work would be lost. The entire program could be set back years. "I'll stop him," Raymond said, already moving towards the computer hub. "Be careful," Dr. Zalax called after him. "We don't know how many infiltrators are in the facility." As Raymond raced through the corridors, dodging panicked scientists and security personnel, he could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. The purist strike team was making its way deeper into the facility. He rounded a corner and saw the entrance to the computer hub ahead. The door was ajar, and he could hear the frantic tapping of keys from within. Taking a deep breath, Raymond steeled himself for what lay ahead. The fate of the Orion species, his relationship with Raya, and the future of human-alien cooperation all hung in the balance. As he stepped into the hub, ready to confront Marcus, he knew that the real battle was only just beginning. As Raymond stepped into the hub, his eyes locked onto Marcus, hunched over a terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Stop!" Raymond shouted, lunging forward. Marcus whirled around, his face contorted with a mix of surprise and drive. "You don't understand, Raymond. This is bigger than us, bigger than the Orions." But Raymond wasn't listening. His mind raced, processing the gravity of the situation. The genetic data stored in these computers was irreplaceable, the culmination of months of painstaking work. Without it, the entire Orion breeding program would collapse. In a split-second decision, Raymond dove for the nearest workstation. His fingers danced across the keys, initiating an emergency backup protocol he had designed but hoped never to use. As the data began transferring to a secure off-site server, Raymond felt a sharp pain in his side. Marcus had tackled him, trying to wrestle him away from the computer. "I can't let you do this," Marcus growled, his eyes wild with desperation. The two men grappled on the floor, each fighting for control. Raymond could hear the computer beeping urgently, signaling the data transfer was still in progress. He just needed to buy a little more time. Suddenly, a loud hiss filled the room. Raymond's eyes widened as he saw a thick, greenish gas seeping in through the ventilation system. The virus. It had breached the computer hub. Marcus, seeing the gas, let go of Raymond and scrambled towards the exit. But Raymond knew he couldn't leave, not until the data transfer was complete. Holding his breath, he lunged back to the workstation, his fingers flying over the keys as he initiated the final stage of the backup. As the progress bar crawled towards completion, Raymond's lungs burned. The room swam before his eyes, the green gas growing thicker by the second. Just as his vision began to darken at the edges, the computer chimed. Transfer complete. Gasping for air, Raymond staggered toward the door. He could see Marcus's unconscious form slumped in the hallway. Despite their conflict, Raymond couldn't leave him there. Summoning his last reserves of strength, he grabbed Marcus by the arms and dragged him away from the contaminated area. In the corridor, Raymond's mind raced. He needed to protect the genetic samples. But how? The virus was spreading rapidly through the facility's air systems. Then it hit him, the cryogenic storage units in the genetics lab. Propping Marcus against a wall, Raymond sprinted towards the lab. Inside, he found a scene of controlled chaos. Orion scientists were hurriedly securing samples, their luminescent skin pulsing with stress and fear. "Everyone out," Raymond shouted, his voice hoarse. "I'm initiating a full cryogenic lockdown." As the scientists evacuated, Raymond began the intricate process of cryogenically preserving the vital genetic material. His hands moved with practiced precision, even as alarms blared and the facility shook with distant explosions. Just as he sealed the last sample, a new alert sounded over the intercom. The facility's air filtration system was failing. The virus would soon permeate every corner of the complex. Raymond looked around frantically. He needed to get the samples out, but how could he transport them safely through the contaminated areas? His eyes fell on a rack of discarded lab equipment, and an idea formed. Working quickly, Raymond cobbled together a makeshift hazmat suit using an old radiation suit, duct tape, and an emergency oxygen tank. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. Donning his improvised protection, Raymond gathered the cryogenic containers. As he prepared to leave the lab, he remembered Marcus. Despite everything, he couldn't leave the man to die. Struggling under the weight of the containers, Raymond made his way back to where he had left Marcus. The other man was still unconscious, but breathing. Somehow, Raymond managed to hoist Marcus over his shoulder while balancing the precious genetic samples. As he navigated the chaotic corridors, Raymond's mind turned to Raya. Where was she? Was she safe? He hoped she had managed to secure some of the viable embryos. Suddenly, the facility rocked with a massive explosion. The lights flickered and died, plunging the hallway into darkness. Emergency backup power kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Through the din of alarms and distant shouts, Raymond heard Dr. Xalax's voice over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. We've identified a potential neutralizing agent for the virus. It's an enzyme found only in the Royal Orion bloodline. Princess Raya, if you can hear this, you must reach the central laboratory immediately." Raymond's heart leaped. Raya was alive, but she was also in grave danger. The central laboratory was in the heart of the facility, right where the fighting was thickest. As if on cue, a group of armed individuals rounded the corner ahead. Their eyes locked onto Raymond, and he saw the hatred blazing in their expressions. The Purist Strike Team. "Human!" one of them snarled, raising his weapon. Raymond's muscles tensed, ready to run. But where? With Marcus on his shoulder and the genetic samples in his arms, he was trapped. Suddenly, Marcus stirred. His eyes fluttered open, taking in the scene before him. For a moment, Raymond saw confusion in his former colleague's face, then understanding, and finally, regret. "Wait," Marcus called out to the Purist, his voice weak but determined. "I can help you. I know the facility's layout, the security protocols. But first, let him go. Let them both go." The Purist hesitated, clearly torn. Raymond held his breath, acutely aware of the weight of the genetic samples in his arms and the ticking clock of the virus spreading through the facility. In that moment of uncertainty, alarms blared with a new urgency. A computerized voice echoed through the corridors. "Warning, electromagnetic pulse deployment imminent. All personnel evacuate immediately." Raymond's blood ran cold. An EMP would destroy all the electronic equipment in the facility, including the life support systems keeping the remaining embryos alive. They were out of time. As the Purists argued among themselves, Raymond made his move. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, he pushed past them, running as fast as he could with his burdens. He heard shouts and the sound of footsteps behind him, but he didn't look back. He had to find Raya. They had to stop the EMP, and somehow, in the middle of all this chaos, they needed to synthesize the enzyme that could save them all. Raymond rounded a corner, his makeshift hazmat suit cumbersome, and his lungs burning with exertion. Ahead he saw a group of Orion scientists huddled near a sealed doorway, and there, her blue skin shimmering with grit, stood Raya. Their eyes met across the chaotic hallway. In that moment, despite the danger surrounding them, Raymond felt a surge of hope. Together they might just have a chance to save the Orion species, and perhaps reshape the future of human-alien relations forever. But first they had to survive the next few minutes. Minutes. Raymond's mind raced, calculating their next move. He locked eyes with Raya, a silent understanding passing between them. "We need to split up," Raymond said, his voice muffled by the makeshift hazmat suit. "You focus on synthesizing that enzyme. I'll secure the genetic samples and find a way to distribute the cure." Raya nodded, her luminescent skin pulsing with commitment. "Be careful, Raymond. The purists—" Her words were cut short by a deafening explosion that rocked the facility. The lights flickered ominously, plunging the corridor into momentary darkness before the red emergency lights sputtered back to life. "Go!" Raymond urged, hefting the unconscious Marcus higher on his shoulder. As Raya disappeared down the corridor with her team of scientists, Raymond turned and sprinted in the opposite direction. The weight of the cryogenic containers and Marcus's limp form made his progress slow and cumbersome. He had barely made it halfway down the hallway when a group of armed figures rounded the corner ahead. Their eyes locked onto Raymond, hatred blazing in their expressions. The Purist strike team. "Human!" one of them snarled, raising his weapon. Raymond's muscles tensed, ready to run. But where? With Marcus on his shoulder and the genetic samples in his arms, he was trapped. In that moment of desperation, Raymond made a split-second decision. He released his grip on Marcus, letting the man slump to the floor, and grabbed a piece of his makeshift hazmat suit. With all his strength, he hurled the improvised headgear at the Purists. The unexpected projectile caught the lead Purist off guard, striking him in the face. The group instinctively flinched, providing Raymond with the distraction he needed. He darted forward, using his shoulder to push past the disoriented attackers. As he broke free from the group, Raymond felt a sharp pain in his arm. One of the Purists had managed to graze him with a shot. Ignoring the burning sensation, he pushed on, his breath coming in ragged gasps inside the confines of his jury-rigged suit. Behind him, he could hear the Purists regrouping, their angry shouts echoing off the walls. Raymond's mind raced, trying to recall the facility's layout. He needed to find a secure location to stash the genetic samples before he could help Raya distribute the enzyme. As he ran, the facility's infrastructure groaned around him. The damage from the Purist attack was taking its toll, and Raymond could feel tremors beneath his feet. Suddenly, a computerized voice crackled over the intercom. "Warning, structural integrity compromised in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." Raymond's heart sank. Sector 7 was where the main embryo storage units were located. If that section collapsed, all their efforts would be for nothing. Rounding a corner, Raymond nearly collided with a group of terrified Orion civilians. They huddled together, their skin flickering with fear, clearly lost in the maze of deteriorating corridors. Despite the urgency of his mission, Raymond couldn't bring himself to abandon them. "This way," he called out, gesturing with his head since his arms were full. "Follow me to the evacuation point." As he led the group through the chaos, Raymond's mind worked overtime. He needed to get these civilians to safety, secure the genetic samples, and then find a way to help Raya distribute the enzyme, all while evading the Purists and navigating a crumbling facility. The sound of running footsteps behind them spurred Raymond to move faster. The Purists were catching up. Just as he thought they might be overtaken, a familiar voice crackled through his communication device. "Raymond, it's Marcus. Listen carefully. Take the next left, then 2 rights. There's a maintenance shaft that'll lead you to the secondary lab." Raymond hesitated for a split second, unsure whether to trust his former colleague. But with the Purists closing in, he had little choice. He followed Marcus's instructions, ushering the civilians ahead of him. True to Marcus's word, they found the maintenance shaft. Raymond helped the Orions inside before climbing in himself, the genetic samples clutched tightly to his chest. As he pulled the access panel shut behind him, he heard the frustrated shouts of the purists echoing in the corridor. Crawling through the cramped shaft, Raymond's arm throbbed where the purist shot had grazed him. He could feel warm blood seeping through the tear in his suit. The risk of contamination from the virus was high, but he pushed the thought aside. There were more pressing concerns. After what felt like an eternity of navigating the claustrophobic passage, Raymond emerged into the secondary lab. The scene that greeted him was one of controlled chaos. Raya stood at the center, her royal composure evident as she directed the efforts of the Orion scientists around her. "Raya!" Raymond called out, his voice hoarse. She turned, relief flooding her features as she saw him. "Raymond, you made it. We've synthesized the enzyme, but—" A violent tremor cut her off, nearly knocking them off their feet. Alarms blared with renewed urgency. "Warning, electromagnetic pulse deployment imminent. All personnel evacuate immediately." Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of unwavering drive. They had precious little time to distribute the enzyme, evacuate the remaining personnel, and secure the future of the Orion species. As another tremor shook the lab, they knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. Ahead, the tremors intensified and chunks of ceiling began to rain down around them. Raymond and Raya exchanged a determined look. Without a word, they split up, each racing towards their respective objectives. Raymond clutched the genetic samples close to his chest as he sprinted towards the embryo storage area. His makeshift hazmat suit hindered his movement, but he pushed through the discomfort. As he rounded a corner, he found his path blocked by a group of purist operatives. Thinking quickly, Raymond spotted a control panel on the wall. He lunged for it, smacking his palm against the emergency fire suppression activation button. Instantly, a thick foam began spraying from nozzles in the ceiling, catching the purists off guard. The sudden deluge created the diversion Raymond needed. He charged forward, using the confusion to slip past the disoriented operatives. However, the foam-slicked floor proved treacherous. Raymond's feet slid out from under him, and he barely managed to keep his grip on the precious genetic samples as he stumbled and slid down the corridor. Meanwhile, Raya had entered the ventilation system, her lithe form allowing her to navigate the narrow passages with ease. As she crawled through the ductwork, she realized the futility of her initial plan. Manually releasing the enzyme at multiple points would take far too long. Raya paused, her mind racing. Then inspiration struck. The central air circulation hub. If she could introduce the enzyme there, it would be distributed throughout the entire facility. She changed course, making her way toward the hub. As she emerged from a vent, she heard muffled cries for help. A group of Orion scientists was trapped behind a partially collapsed doorway. Despite the urgency of her mission, Raya couldn't bring herself to leave them. "Stand back," she called out, using her enhanced strength to pry the damaged door open. The grateful scientists stumbled out, their skin flickering with relief. "Thank you, Princess," one of them said, bowing slightly. Raya shook her head. "No time for formalities. I need your help. We must reach the central air circulation hub." In the command center, Dr. Zalax received an urgent transmission from the Orion High Council. His face paled as he listened to the message. "Raymond Raya," he called over the communication system, his voice tight with stress. "The purest reinforcements are approaching faster than anticipated. The Council is moving up the timeline for the electromagnetic pulse. We have less time than we thought." The news sent a surge of adrenaline through Raymond as he finally reached the embryo storage area. The scene that greeted him was one of chaos. Several stasis pods were flashing warning signals, their life support systems failing. Raymond worked feverishly, his hands flying over the controls as he transferred at-risk embryos to functioning pods. Sweat beaded on his forehead inside the stuffy hazmat suit, but he couldn't afford to slow down. As he worked, he carefully integrated the preserved genetic samples he'd carried with him, ensuring their safety. Across the facility, Raya and the scientists arrived at the central air circulation hub, only to find it heavily damaged. Sparks flew from exposed wiring, and parts of the machinery lay in ruins. It's too damaged, one of the scientists said, despair evident in his voice. We can't repair it in time. Raya stared at the hub, her mind racing. Then, without hesitation, she pulled a small blade from her belt. We don't need to repair it, she said, making a small incision on her palm. We just need to introduce the enzyme. The scientists watched in awe as Raya held her bleeding hand over the hub's intake system. Her royal blood, rich with the neutralizing enzyme, dripped into the mechanism. As it mixed with the air supply, the enzyme began to spread throughout the facility. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the building. The main support column, weakened by the ongoing battle, finally gave way. The floor beneath Raya's feet buckled, and she barely managed to leap clear as a section of the ceiling came crashing down. We need to get out of here, she shouted to the scientists, helping them navigate through the falling debris. In the embryo storage area, Raymond had just secured the last of the viable embryos when the tremor hit. Shelves toppled around him, and he had to dive to avoid being crushed by a falling support beam. As the shaking subsided, Raymond realized his path back to the central atrium was now blocked by collapsed rubble. He would have to find another way out. Raya, he called into his communication device. The main route is blocked. I'm going to try to go through the lower levels. Understood, Raya's voice crackled back. Be careful, Raymond. I'm making my way back through the upper levels. We'll meet in the central atrium. As Raymond descended into the partially flooded lower level, he could see the effects of Raya's enzyme distribution. The sickly hue that had permeated the air was dissipating, replaced by a clearer atmosphere. But the structural integrity of the fertility center continued to worsen, with more sections collapsing by the minute. The countdown to the electromagnetic pulse entered its final phase, adding urgency to the already tense situation. Raymond waded through knee-deep water, the precious container of embryos held high above his head. He could hear the groaning of stressed metal all around him, a constant reminder that time was running out. Above, Raya demonstrated her enhanced Orion agility, leaping across gaps in the floor and sliding under falling beams. She guided the scientists with her, ensuring their safety as they made their way toward the central atrium. As both Raymond and Raya converged on the central atrium from different directions, they could see the full extent of the enzyme's effect. The virus's spread had halted, and some of the infected areas were showing signs of recovery. But the victory was bittersweet, as the fertility center itself was in its death throes. They locked eyes across the debris-strewn atrium, relief flooding their faces at the sight of each other. But there was no time for celebration. The electromagnetic pulse was imminent, threatening to destroy everything they had fought so hard to preserve. Raymond hefted the container of embryos, his arms aching from the effort. We need to get these out of here, he called to Raya. She nodded, already scanning the room for a possible escape route. The research data, she said. We can't leave without it. As they stood in the crumbling atrium, the weight of their next decisions pressed heavily upon them. The embryos, the data, the remaining personnel, all needed to be evacuated before the pulse hit. But with the facility falling apart around them and time rapidly running out, how could they possibly save it all? All. But the situation demanded swift action, and there was no time for indecision. The research data, Raya repeated, her voice more urgent. We can't leave without it. Raymond nodded, his mind racing. You're right. We need to... His words were cut short as Marcus burst into the atrium, narrowly avoiding a falling beam. He stumbled, regaining his balance as he rushed towards them. Raymond! Raya! Marcus shouted, his face etched with concern. The High Council! They're moving up the timeline for the electromagnetic pulse. We have minutes at most. The news hit them like a physical blow. Raymond tightened his grip on the container of embryos, acutely aware of the precious cargo he held. We need to move now, Raymond said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Marcus, can you access the central computer system? We need to initiate a data transfer of all critical research to a secure off-site server. Marcus nodded, immediately moving towards a nearby terminal. His fingers flew over the keys, navigating through security protocols with practiced ease. Raya, her royal training kicking in, took charge of the evacuation efforts. She activated the facility's emergency communication system, her voice clear and authoritative as it echoed through the crumbling structure. Attention all personnel. This is Princess Raya. Proceed immediately to the nearest escape pods. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. As Marcus worked feverishly on the data transfer and Raya coordinated the evacuation, Raymond scanned the atrium for any remaining personnel. The ground beneath their feet trembled, a constant reminder of the facility's imminent collapse. Suddenly, a group of armed figures burst into the atrium from a side corridor. Raymond's heart sank as he recognized the distinctive uniforms of the Purist operatives. At their head stood a tall, imposing figure, their commander. Raymond instinctively moved to shield the embryostasis unit with his body. Raya took a defensive stance beside him, her lithe form tense and ready for action. The Purist commander's eyes darted from Raymond to Raya, then to the stasis unit. For a moment, the only sound was the groaning of stressed metal and the distant rumble of collapsing sections of the facility. Then, to everyone's surprise, the commander lowered his weapon. "This mission is over," he announced, his voice gruff but resigned. "We all need to evacuate before that pulse hits, or none of us will make it out alive." Raymond exchanged a quick glance with Raya, reading the same wary acceptance in her eyes that he felt. With a slight nod, they accepted the temporary truce. "The escape pods are this way," Raya said, gesturing towards a corridor that was, for the moment, still intact. As one, the unlikely group moved towards the escape route. Raymond cradled the stasis unit containing the embryos and genetic samples, while Raya guided the way, her enhanced Orion senses alert for any signs of imminent structural failure. They encountered small groups of scientists and staff along the way, ushering them towards the escape pods. The ship's corridors were a cacophony of blaring alarms, shouted instructions, and the ominous creaking of a dying structure. As they reached the bay housing the escape pods, Raymond felt a surge of hope. They were almost there, almost safe. Then a violent tremor rocked the facility. Raymond stumbled, nearly losing his grip on the stasis unit. He looked up in horror to see a massive section of the ceiling beginning to collapse directly above the remaining escape pod. Time seemed to slow. Without conscious thought, Raymond acted. He shoved the stasis unit into Raya's arms and pushed her towards the pod with all his might. She stumbled inside, clutching the container to her chest, her eyes wide with shock and realization. "Raymond, no!" she cried, reaching out for him, but it was too late. Raymond slammed his palm on the external door controls, sealing Raya inside the pod just as the debris came crashing down. The last thing he saw was her face, a mask of anguish, as the pod's systems engaged and prepared for launch. As the dust settled, Raymond found himself trapped on the wrong side of a wall of debris, separated from the escape pod and from Raya. He turned to see Marcus and the Purist operatives staring at him in disbelief. "We need to find another way out," Raymond said, his voice hoarse. "Now!" Inside the escape pod, Raya fought against the automated launch sequence, her fingers flying over the controls as she attempted to override the system. She couldn't leave, not without Raymond. Outside, Raymond, Marcus, and the Purists frantically searched for an alternative escape route. The facility groaned around them, the countdown to the electromagnetic pulse ticking away in their minds. As alarms blared and the structure continued to crumble, the unlikely allies raced against time. They had mere moments to find a way out before the pulse hit, threatening to strand them in the collapsing facility forever. With the embryos and genetic samples safe with Raya, but the research data still in jeopardy, Raymond knew their next actions would determine not just their own fates, but potentially the future of human-Orion relations. As another tremor shook the facility, he steeled himself for what promised to be the most challenging moments of his life. As another tremor shook the facility, he steeled himself for what promised to be the most challenging moments of his career. "This way," Marcus shouted, gesturing towards a partially collapsed corridor. "I remember seeing maintenance access tunnels on the facility schematics. They might lead us to an auxiliary hangar." Raymond nodded, his heart pounding as he followed Marcus. The Purist operatives fell in line behind them, their previous animosity forgotten in the face of imminent destruction. They navigated through the unstable structure, ducking under fallen beams and leaping over fissures in the floor. The group's footsteps echoed through the metal passageways as they sprinted towards potential salvation. Raymond's lungs burned with each breath, the air thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning electronics. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocked the facility. Raymond stumbled, catching himself against the wall as a deafening crack split the air. He looked up in horror to see the ceiling of the tunnel collapsing. "Look out!" he yelled, pushing Marcus forward with all his might. The debris came crashing down, filling the tunnel with a thunderous roar. When the dust settled, Raymond found himself separated from the others by a wall of twisted metal and concrete. "Marcus, are you all right?" Raymond called out, his voice hoarse. "We're okay." Marcus's muffled voice came from the other side. "But the tunnel's completely blocked. We can't get to you." Raymond's mind raced, weighing their options. Time was running out. "Go on without me," he shouted. "Get to the hangar. I'll find another way." "But there's no time to argue. Go." He heard Marcus hesitate, then bark orders to the purest operatives. Their footsteps faded as they continued down the tunnel, leaving Raymond alone in the crumbling facility. Meanwhile, in the escape pod, Raya fought against the automated systems, her fingers flying over the controls. She couldn't leave Raymond behind, not after everything they'd been through. An idea struck her. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. She engaged the pod's maneuvering thrusters, carefully repositioning the vessel near a severely damaged section of the fertility center's outer wall. The pod shuddered as it pressed against the weakened structure. Raya's heart raced as she initiated the cutting laser, carving an opening into the facility. Alarms blared, warning of the breach in the pod's hull, but she ignored them. She had to get back inside. As the laser completed its work, a section of the wall fell away. Raya secured the stasis unit containing the embryos and genetic samples, then took a deep breath. She was about to risk everything, her life, the future of her species, on the slim chance of saving Raymond. With one last look at the precious cargo, Raya stepped out of the pod and into the crumbling facility. In the auxiliary hangar, Marcus and the Purist operatives scrambled aboard the last functional shuttle. The Purist commander's hands flew over the controls, initiating the launch sequence. But as the engines hummed to life, the commander hesitated. He looked back at the hangar entrance, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "What are you waiting for?" Marcus demanded. "We need to go." The commander's teeth gritted. "That human, Raymond, he didn't hesitate to save your princess. Can we really leave him behind?" Before Marcus could respond, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Raymond won't be left behind." They turned to see Dr. Xalax, the lead Orion scientist, emerging from a hidden panel in the hangar wall. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his lab coat stained with grime and soot. "I've been monitoring the evacuation from a secure bunker," Dr. Xalax explained quickly. "I have a way to save Raymond, but we must act now." Without waiting for a response, the Orion scientist turned and disappeared back through the hidden door. Marcus and the Purist commander exchanged a look, then leapt from the shuttle to follow. Raymond, meanwhile, had backtracked through the facility, searching desperately for another escape route. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with Dr. Xalax. "Doctor," Raymond exclaimed, relief flooding through him. "What are you—" "No time for explanations," Dr. Xalax interrupted, grabbing Raymond's arm. "Come with me, quickly." They sprinted through the disintegrating structure, Dr. Xalax leading them down corridors Raymond had never seen before. They ducked under falling debris and leapt over widening chasms in the floor. "So where are we going?" Raymond shouted over the cacophony of alarms and groaning metal. "To our last hope," Dr. Xalax replied cryptically. They rounded a final corner, and Raymond saw it, a sleek, egg-shaped pod unlike anything he'd seen before. It hummed with energy, seemingly unaffected by the chaos around it. "A secret escape pod," Dr. Xalax explained as they approached, "designed for high-ranking Orion officials. It's our only chance now." As they reached the pod, a familiar voice echoed through the corridor. "Raymond!" He turned to see Raya sprinting towards them, her face a mixture of relief and perseverance. "Raya, what are you—" Raymond began, but was cut off by a deafening boom. The electromagnetic pulse had detonated. A blinding flash of energy erupted from multiple points around Zeta Prime. The pulse swept through the fertility center like a tidal wave, overloading systems and causing further structural damage. Raymond reached out to Raya as she neared, their fingers almost touching. But before they could connect, a massive section of the ceiling came crashing down between them. "No!" Raymond cried, lunging forward only to be held back by Dr. Xalax. "We must go now," the scientist insisted, pulling Raymond towards the escape pod. As they climbed inside, Raymond caught one last glimpse of Raya through the settling dust. Their eyes met for a brief moment before the pod's door sealed shut. The secret escape pod hummed to life, its systems protected from the electromagnetic pulse by advanced Orion shielding technology. Through the viewport, Raymond watched in horror as the fertility center began its final, catastrophic collapse. The pod launched, streaking away from the doomed facility, but as they accelerated into the atmosphere, Raymond's thoughts remained with Raya and the others left behind. Had they escaped in time? And what would this mean for the future of human-Orion relations? As Zeta Prime shrank behind them, Raymond knew that their ordeal was just the beginning. The challenges that lay ahead would test not only their survival skills, but also the fragile alliance between humans and Orions. With the fate of both species hanging in the balance, Raymond steeled himself for whatever might come next. As Zeta Prime shrank behind them, the secret escape pod carrying Raymond and Dr. Xalax hurtled through the atmosphere. The initial relief of their escape was short-lived as the electromagnetic pulse swept outward from the fertility center, its effects rippling through space. The pod's control panel erupted in a cacophony of alerts and warning lights. Raymond gripped the edges of his seat as the vessel shuddered violently. "The pulse is interfering with our systems," Dr. Xalax shouted, his fingers dancing over the controls. "I'm activating the emergency shielding." A low hum filled the pod as a shimmering energy field enveloped it. The turbulence subsided momentarily, but the power systems began to fluctuate, causing the lights to flicker ominously. Raymond's eyes were drawn to the viewport, scanning the chaos below. His heart leapt as he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure moving through the collapsing facility. "Raya," he whispered, leaning closer to the glass. "She's still down there." Without hesitation, Raymond lunged for the pod's control panel. Dr. Xalax tried to intervene, but Raymond was faster. His hand slammed down on the emergency hatch release. "What are you doing?" Dr. Xalax cried, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I can't leave her behind," Raymond replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil around them. The hatch hissed open, and Raymond prepared to jump. Dr. Xalax grabbed his arm. "This is madness. You'll never survive the fall." Raymond met the scientist's gaze. "I have to try." With that, he leapt from the pod, plummeting back toward the disintegrating fertility center. The wind whipped past him as he fell, his eyes fixed on the point where he'd last seen Raya. Inside the crumbling facility, Raya navigated through a maze of twisted metal and sparking wires. Her enhanced Orion senses allowed her to detect structural weaknesses and avoid falling debris. She paused momentarily, her nostrils flaring as she caught a whiff of the neutralizing enzyme she'd released earlier. Following the scent, Raya found herself in a pocket of relative calm amidst the destruction. She took a moment to catch her breath and assess her surroundings. The facility groaned and shuddered around her, but the enzyme's effects provided a temporary respite from the worst of the collapse. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Raya!" She spun around to see Raymond stumbling through a partially collapsed corridor, his clothes singed and torn. "Raymond!" she called back, relief flooding her voice. "How did you—" Her question was cut short as a massive tremor shook the facility. The floor beneath them buckled, and they both lost their footing. Raymond reached out, managing to grab Raya's hand as they slid towards a gaping chasm that had opened up in the floor. They came to a stop at the edge, their legs dangling over the abyss. Raymond grunted with effort as he held onto Raya with one hand and gripped a twisted piece of rebar with the other. "Hold on," he gasped, his muscles straining. Raya's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. She spotted a maintenance robot nearby, its basic functions still operational. The machine was methodically clearing debris from a nearby corridor, creating a potential escape route. "The robot," Raya said, nodding towards it. "If we can reach it, we might have a chance." Raymond nodded, gritting his teeth. With a Herculean effort, he began to swing Raya back and forth. On the third swing, she let go, flying through the air and landing on a relatively stable section of flooring near the robot. Raya quickly oriented herself and turned back to Raymond. "Now you!" Raymond took a deep breath, steeling himself for the jump. Just as he was about to let go, the rebar he was holding snapped. He plummeted toward the chasm, a cry of surprise escaping his lips. At the last second, Raya lunged forward, her hand closing around Raymond's wrist. She pulled with all her might, dragging him onto solid ground beside her. They lay there for a moment, panting heavily, before the rumble of the collapsing structure spurred them into action. Together, they scrambled after the maintenance robot, following the path it cleared through the debris. As they moved deeper into the facility, they encountered Dr. Zalax, who had managed to follow Raymond using the pod's emergency descent systems. The scientist clutched a portable stasis unit to his chest. "Quickly," Dr. Zalax shouted over the din of alarms and crashing debris. "This way." He led them to a partially collapsed laboratory where he revealed the contents of the stasis unit. Not only genetic samples, but also a prototype personal shield generator. "It's meant for the Orion royal family," Dr. Zalax explained hurriedly. "It might be our only chance." Without warning, the lab began to tilt, breaking away from the main structure. Dr. Zalax activated the shield around Raymond and Raya, the energy field enveloping them in a soft blue glow. "Go!" Dr. Zalax shouted, pushing them towards a gap in the lab's wall. Raymond reached out for the scientist, but it was too late. The floor gave way, and they were falling, tumbling through the disintegrating facility. The shield flickered and strained under the impacts of falling debris, but it held, guided by Raya's instinctive connection to the Orion technology. They burst through the bottom of the facility, the shield now barely visible as they plummeted towards Zeta Prime's surface. Raymond held Raya close, their eyes locked on each other as the ground rushed up to meet them. Just when all seemed lost, a battered shuttle appeared below them, its hull scarred and smoking. Through the viewports, they could see Marcus and the Purist operatives, their faces etched with concentration as they maneuvered the vessel beneath the falling couple. With a bone-jarring impact, Raymond and Raya crashed through the shuttle's emergency airlock. The last of the shield's energy dissipated, leaving them bruised but alive on the shuttle's floor. As they struggled to their feet, Raymond and Raya moved to the nearest viewport. The sight that greeted them was one of utter devastation. The Fertility Center, once a pinnacle of scientific achievement and hope for the Orion species, was now collapsing in on itself, sinking into a massive chasm. The shuttle limped away from the destruction, its engines sputtering and straining. Inside, humans and Orions alike watched in stunned silence as the Fertility Center disappeared from view, taking with it years of work and countless lives. Raymond turned to Raya, his hand finding hers in the dim light of the shuttle's hold. Their eyes met, a mixture of relief, grief, and uncertainty passing between them. The genetic samples they had managed to save now represented the last hope for the Orion species' survival. As the shuttle pushed on towards the nearest safe haven, Raymond and Raya held each other close, their minds racing with the enormity of what had transpired and the challenges that lay ahead. The breeding program was in ruins, and they faced potential hostilities from both human and Orion factions. The shuttle's comm system crackled to life, breaking the tense silence. Urgent messages flooded in, reporting on the widespread effects of the electromagnetic pulse and the unexpected space battle that had erupted above Zeta Prime. Raymond squared his shoulders, his grip on Raya's hand tightening. They had survived the immediate crisis, but he knew their journey was far from finished. With the fate of two species now resting in their hands, they would need to navigate treacherous political waters and rebuild the breeding program from scratch. As Zeta Prime's sun began to set, casting long shadows across the shuttle's battered hull, Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of quiet perseverance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Together, they would find a way forward. The shuttle's engines sputtered and groaned as Marcus guided it towards the horizon. Raymond moved to the cockpit, scanning the barren landscape of Zeta Prime for any sign of sanctuary. "We need to find a safe place to land," he said, his voice hoarse from the smoke and debris. "Somewhere we can regroup and figure out our next move." Marcus nodded, his fingers dancing across the controls. "I've got an idea. There's an Orion outpost about 50 kilometers from here. It was set up as a backup facility for the breeding program." Raya's eyes widened. "The auxiliary research station? I thought it was abandoned." "Not entirely," Marcus replied. "It's understaffed, but it's our best shot at continuing the mission." Raymond felt a glimmer of hope. "Set a course. We'll make do with whatever we find there." As the shuttle limped towards the outpost, Raymond took stock of their situation. The purest operatives huddled in the back, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and wariness. The genetic samples they'd managed to save were securely stored, but their viability remained uncertain. The outpost came into view as they crested a ridge. It was a squat utilitarian structure, its gray walls barely visible against the rocky terrain. As they approached, Raymond could see signs of neglect, dusty solar panels and overgrown vegetation around the perimeter. Marcus set the shuttle down on a small landing pad, the engines whining in protest as they powered down. The group disembarked, the Zeta Prime wind whipping around them as they made their way to the entrance. Inside the outpost was a far cry from the state-of-the-art fertility center. Dim emergency lighting flickered in the hallways, and a layer of dust covered most surfaces. Raymond and Raya took charge, quickly assessing their resources. "The medical bay is basic but functional," Raya reported, her fingers flying over a control panel. "And there's a small lab we might be able to use." Raymond nodded, already formulating a plan. "All right, let's get organized. Marcus, see if you can get the main systems back online. I want full power and communications as soon as possible." Marcus set to work, his hacking skills put to a new purpose as he interfaced with the outpost's outdated computers. The purest operatives, realizing the precariousness of their situation, begrudgingly offered their assistance in setting up the medical equipment. As the hours ticked by, the outpost slowly came to life. Lights flickered on, and the hum of machinery filled the air. Raymond and Raya worked tirelessly in the lab, carefully examining the genetic samples they'd rescued. "It's not as bad as I feared," Raya said, peering into a microscope. "Many of the samples are damaged, but there's enough viable material here to work with." Raymond felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "That's the best news I've heard all day. We might actually have a chance to restart the program." Their moment of relief was short-lived. Marcus burst into the lab, his face pale. "We've got incoming transmissions. The Orion High Council is sending an investigative team, and Earth's government is dispatching a diplomatic envoy. They're demanding answers about what happened at the fertility center." Raymond ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "How long do we have?" "A few days at most," Marcus replied. "But that's not all. I've been monitoring the comms channels. The destruction of the fertility center is all over the news. Both sides are looking for someone to blame." Raya's expression hardened. "We need to be prepared for their arrival. If we can demonstrate that we've salvaged part of the program, it might buy us some goodwill." Raymond nodded, his perseverance strengthening. "Agreed. Let's double down on our efforts. We need to show tangible progress by the time they get here." As they threw themselves into their work, Raymond couldn't help but notice the growing connection between himself and Raya. Their shared ordeal had forged a bond that went beyond mere collaboration. In quiet moments between tasks, he found himself drawn to her, fascinated by the way her bioluminescent skin shimmered under the lab lights. Days passed in a blur of activity. The outpost transformed from a neglected backup facility into a hub of frantic research and preparation. Raymond and Raya made breakthrough after breakthrough, pushing the limits of their expertise to maximize the potential of their limited genetic samples. On the fifth day, as Raymond was poring over a set of test results, a commotion outside caught his attention. He rushed to the main entrance, Raya close behind him. A sleek spacecraft had landed next to their battered shuttle, its design unmistakably Orion. The ship's hatch opened, and a striking figure emerged. She was tall even for an Orion, with deep blue skin and piercing silver eyes. She strode towards them with purpose, her gaze taking in every detail of the outpost. "I am Dr. Alara," she announced, her voice carrying a note of authority. "I've been sent by the High Council to investigate the events at the Fertility Center and assess the current state of the breeding program." Raymond stepped forward, extending his hand in greeting. "Dr. Alara, I'm Raymond, and this is Raya. We're glad you're here. There's much to discuss, and we could certainly use your expertise." Dr. Alara's eyes narrowed slightly, but she took Raymond's hand. "Indeed, I look forward to examining your work. The fate of our species may well depend on what you've managed to salvage." As Raymond led Dr. Alara into the outpost, he caught Raya's eye. They shared a silent moment of understanding. This was just the beginning. With the arrival of the Orion investigator, the real challenge was about to begin. They would need every ounce of their skill, purpose, and growing trust in each other to navigate the complex web of interspecies politics and scientific advancement that lay ahead. The future of human-Orion relations hung in the balance, and the next few days would be crucial in determining whether their fragile alliance would strengthen or crumble under the weight of recent events. As they entered the lab to begin their discussions with Dr. Alara, Raymond steeled himself for the challenges to come, knowing that every decision they made from this point forward could have far-reaching consequences for both their species. Species could have far-reaching consequences for both their peoples. As Raymond and Raya led Dr. Alara through the outpost, the atmosphere grew tense with the weight of unspoken questions. The Orion investigator's piercing gaze took in every detail, her expression unreadable as she observed their makeshift operation. "We've made significant progress," Raymond began, gesturing to a holographic display of their latest genetic analysis. "Despite the limited samples, we've managed to—" A sudden alarm cut through the air, interrupting his explanation. Marcus burst into the lab, his face flushed with urgency. "We've got a problem. Long-range sensors have picked up multiple incoming vessels. It's the full Orion investigative force, and they're not alone. An Earth diplomatic envoy is approaching as well." Raymond's stomach tightened. He exchanged a worried glance with Raya, whose bioluminescent skin flickered with anxiety. "How long do we have?" "Less than 48 hours, Marcus replied, his fingers flying over a nearby console. "And there's more. I've intercepted some chatter. It sounds like they're considering shutting down the entire breeding program." Dr. Alara's stoic demeanor cracked, her silver eyes widening with alarm. "That cannot happen. The future of our species depends on this work." Raymond nodded, his mind racing. "We need to act fast. Raya, remember Dr. Zalax's last words about the underground facility? I think it's time we investigated." Raya's antennae twitched with excitement. "Yes, of course. If there's anything down there that could help our cause, we need to find it before the authorities arrive." "I'll assemble a team," Raymond said, already moving towards the door. "Marcus, keep monitoring those transmissions. Dr. Alara, we could use your expertise on this expedition." As word spread through the outpost, a flurry of activity erupted. Raymond quickly organized a meeting with all key personnel, including the Purist operatives who had begrudgingly integrated into their group. In the cramped conference room, he laid out the situation and their plan. "Time is not on our side," Raymond stated, his voice firm. "We need to present a united front when the authorities arrive. Our best chance lies in what we might find in that underground facility." Dr. Alara stepped forward, her tall frame commanding attention. "I've analyzed the surviving genetic samples," she announced. "There's something unusual about them, a genetic marker I've never seen before, present in both human and Orion DNA." A murmur rippled through the room. Raya leaned in, her eyes wide. "What does that mean?" "It suggests our compatibility might not be coincidental," Dr. Alara explained. "This could be evidence of ancient genetic engineering." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Raymond seized the moment, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "All the more reason to explore that facility immediately. We'll assemble a small team. Myself, Raya, Dr. Alara, and 2 of our more combat-ready Purist allies. Any volunteers?" 2 of the operatives, a man and a woman with military bearing, stepped forward. Raymond nodded his approval. As the meeting dispersed and preparations began, Marcus pulled Raymond aside. "I've cracked an encrypted transmission from the Orion ship," he whispered. "It's worse than we thought. The High Council is seriously considering terminating the breeding program entirely." Raymond's eyebrows furrowed. "Then we have no choice. We leave for the underground facility in 1 hour." The small expedition team gathered at the hidden access point Dr. Zalax had mentioned in his final moments. As they prepared to descend, Raymond couldn't help but notice the growing tension between himself and Raya. The weight of their responsibilities, the fate of two species resting on their shoulders, seemed to create a palpable distance between them. Pushing aside his personal concerns, Raymond activated the ancient Orion security panel. To everyone's surprise, it sprang to life, bathing them in a soft blue glow. Raya stepped forward, her royal bloodline proving its worth as the facility recognized her genetic signature. With a low hum, the entrance slid open, revealing a dark passage that plunged deep into the planet's surface. "Stay alert," Raymond warned as they entered. "We don't know what kind of security measures we might encounter." As if in response to his words, the passage suddenly blazed with light. Energy barriers sprang up, blocking their path, while robotic sentinels emerged from hidden alcoves. For a tense moment, it seemed they would be overwhelmed. But Raya stepped forward, her skin glowing brightly. The barriers flickered and died, the sentinels standing down as they recognized her Orion royal DNA. "It seems my ancestors left us a way in," she said, a hint of wonder in her voice. They pressed deeper into the facility, each new chamber revealing technological marvels beyond their wildest expectations. But it was in the central chamber that they made their most startling discovery. Rows upon rows of stasis pods filled the vast space, most empty or degraded by time, but a few still pulsed with life, their occupants perfectly preserved. Dr. Alara's scans revealed a treasure trove of genetic diversity, including species unknown to modern Orion science. "This is incredible," Dr. Alara breathed, her usual composure shaken. "With these samples, we could revolutionize the breeding program, ensure the survival of not just our species, but countless others." At the heart of the chamber stood a sophisticated computer core. As Raya approached, it sprang to life, projecting a holographic image of an ancient Orion scientist. The message it delivered shook them to their core. "Greetings, descendants," the hologram began. "If you are viewing this, then Project Convergence has succeeded in its primary objective. The genetic legacy of our people, and many others, has been preserved." The ancient Orion went on to explain the true nature of the human Orion breeding program. Humans, it revealed, were not randomly selected partners, but the result of careful genetic manipulation by ancient Orions, seeded on Earth millions of years ago as a failsafe for their species' survival. Raymond staggered back, his mind blown from the implications. We're part Orion?" he whispered, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. Before anyone could fully process this earth-shattering revelation, alarms blared throughout the facility. The computer core announced the approach of multiple vessels. The Orion High Council and Earth diplomatic envoy had arrived. Automated defense systems began to power up, targeting the approaching ships. Raymond and Raya locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. Despite the risks, they couldn't let those ships be destroyed. "We have to warn them," Raymond said, moving quickly to the facility's communication array. "It's time to bring everything into the open." As he prepared to broadcast a message to both approaching vessels, Raymond felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Whatever happened next would change the course of human and Orion relations forever. The future of both species now hung in the balance, with Raymond and Raya standing at the crossroads of a new era. With Raymond and Raya standing at the crossroads of a new chapter in interstellar relations. Raymond's fingers flew over the communication array's controls, his heart pounding as he broadcast an urgent message to the approaching vessels. "This is Dr. Raymond Chen at Outpost Delta. We've made a critical discovery. Please abort your approach. The facility's automated defenses are active and may target your ships. We need time to deactivate them safely." As he spoke, the ancient security systems hummed to life around them, energy fields crackling with terrifying power. Raya worked feverishly beside him, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with concentration, as she attempted to override the defense protocols. "It's no use," she hissed, frustration evident in her voice. "The systems are too old, too complex. We need more time." Dr. Alara's voice cut through the tension. "We may not have that luxury. Look!" On the monitors, they watched as the Orion and human ships began evasive maneuvers, narrowly avoiding the first salvo of energy beams fired from concealed planetary cannons. The situation was escalating rapidly, threatening to spiral into an interstellar incident. "We have to get up there," Raymond declared, his mind racing. "It's the only way to prevent a catastrophe." As they hurried back to the surface, the outpost erupted into a flurry of activity. The arrival of the Orion High Council representatives and Earth's diplomats transformed the once quiet facility into a hub of frantic diplomacy and heated debates. In the main conference room, Raymond and Raya found themselves at the center of a storm of questions and accusations. Orion officials demanded explanations for the activation of ancient defenses, while human diplomats pressed for details on the startling revelations about their species' origins. "This changes everything," an Orion counselor declared, her silver eyes flashing. "If humans are truly a product of Orion genetic manipulation, the entire basis of our alliance must be reevaluated." "On the contrary," a human diplomat countered, "this discovery only strengthens the bonds between our peoples. We share a common ancestry." As the debate raged on, Dr. Alara burst into the room, her usual composure replaced by barely held-back excitement. "I've made a breakthrough," she announced, silencing the arguing factions. "The genetic marker we found. It's not just evidence of our shared history. It's the key to unlocking advanced regenerative abilities in both species." A hush fell over the room as the implications of her words sank in. Raymond seized the moment, stepping forward with a proposal. "This could be the solution we've been searching for," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "A joint human-Orion research initiative to study and develop applications for these regenerative properties. It could end the Orion fertility crisis and revolutionize human medicine." The proposal sent ripples of excitement and apprehension through the assembled officials. As discussions began in earnest, Raymond allowed himself a moment of hope. Perhaps they could forge a new path forward, one of true cooperation and mutual benefit. But the fragile peace was shattered in an instant. Alarms blared throughout the outpost and the main view screen flickered to life, showing a group of Orion extremists breaching the outer defenses. Their leader, a tall, imposing figure with deep green skin, addressed the camera directly. "I am Zaxos," he declared, his voice dripping with contempt. "We are here to purge this abomination, to erase all evidence of this so-called ancient breeding program. The purity of the Orion people must be preserved at all costs." Chaos erupted as the extremists stormed the facility. Raymond's combat training kicked in, and he quickly began organizing a defense. "Marcus," he shouted over the din, "can you access the outpost security systems?" Marcus nodded grimly, his fingers already dancing across a nearby terminal. "I'm on it, but these old systems are fighting me every step of the way." As the sound of energy weapons echoed through the corridors, Raymond turned to the purest operatives who had become unlikely allies. "We need your help," he said, meeting their eyes. "Whatever our differences, we can't let these fanatics destroy everything we've discovered." The operatives exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. They quickly moved to defensive positions, their military training evident in their efficient movements. Raya, her royal authority radiating from her very being, attempted to reason with the attackers through the communication system. "In the name of the Orion High Council, I command you to stand down," she declared, her voice firm but tinged with desperation. But Zaxos and his followers were beyond reason. They pressed their attack, driven by a zealotry that brooked no compromise. As the battle raged, a new threat emerged. The underground facility's automated defense systems, awakened by the conflict, began deploying ancient security drones. These relics of a bygone era showed no distinction between friend and foe, their targeting systems indiscriminately locking onto both the extremists and the outpost defenders. Raymond found himself caught in a three-way firefight, ducking energy blasts from Orion extremists, while also avoiding the implacable advance of the security drones. He shouted orders, coordinating the defense as best he could in the chaos. "Dr. Alara," he called over the comm system, "we need to secure those genetic samples. They're too valuable to lose." In the genetics lab, Dr. Alara worked with feverish intensity, her hands steady despite the sounds of battle drawing ever closer. She initiated an emergency protocol, racing against time to synthesize a stabilizing agent that would preserve the critical samples even under extreme conditions. As she worked, a stray energy blast rocked the lab, nearly upsetting her delicate equipment. Ilara gritted her teeth, knowing that the slightest mistake could undo all their hard work and destroy their best hope for the future. Meanwhile, Marcus hunched over his terminal, sweat beading on his brow as he attempted to wrest control of the ancient security systems. The facility's original creators had left behind a labyrinth of encrypted protocols and countermeasures, forcing Marcus to constantly adapt his approach. "Come on, you stubborn piece of," he muttered, his fingers flying across the keyboard. A small victory brought a grim smile to his face as he managed to redirect a group of drones away from their allies and towards the advancing extremists. In the heart of the conflict, Raymond led a small team towards the central computer core. He had realized Zaxos's true objective, a complete data purge that would erase all evidence of the ancient breeding program and destroy their invaluable research. As they fought their way through the corridors, Raymond caught sight of Raya wielding an advanced Orion energy weapon. The Orion High Council representatives had entrusted her with a powerful device, believing her royal bloodline would allow her to control it effectively. Raya's inexperience with the weapon was evident, but her drive was unwavering. She fired with increasing accuracy, her shots finding their mark more often than not. Just as they neared the central core, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The outpost power core had been hit, triggering a meltdown sequence. Warning klaxons blared as the computer announced the imminent destruction of the entire facility. Raymond's mind raced. They were out of time. The extremists were at the doors of the central core. The outpost was about to be obliterated, and the fruits of their groundbreaking research hung in the balance. As he prepared to make a decision that could alter the course of history for both humans and Orions, Raymond locked eyes with Raya. In that moment of shared understanding, they knew that whatever choice they made, they would face the consequences together. The fate of two species now rested in their hands, with the clock ticking down to zero and chaos reigning on all sides. The next few moments would determine whether their discoveries would revolutionize the future or be lost to the annals of history forever. The fate of two species now rested in their hands, with the clock ticking down to zero and chaos reigning on all sides. Raymond's mind raced as he assessed their options, acutely aware that their next move could determine whether their groundbreaking discoveries would revolutionize the future or be lost forever. "We need to get to the central computer core," Raymond shouted over the din of alarms and weapons fire. "It's our only chance to stop Zaxos from purging the data." Raya nodded, her grip tightening on the Orion energy weapon. "I'll cover you," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Raymond quickly assembled a team, including the former Purist operatives who had become unlikely allies in this crisis. They moved swiftly through the corridors, navigating around fallen debris and sparking electrical panels. The facility shuddered violently, nearly throwing them off their feet. Raymond steadied himself against a wall, feeling the heat of overloading systems seeping through the metal. "We don't have much time, Hanon," he urged, pushing forward. As they rounded a corner, they encountered a group of malfunctioning security drones. The ancient machines whirred and clicked, their targeting systems locking onto the team. Before Raymond could react, one of the Purist operatives stepped forward, firing precise shots that disabled the drone's main processors. "Nice shooting," Raymond said, nodding appreciatively to the operative. "Just because we were on opposite sides doesn't mean we can't work together now," the operative replied grimly. They pressed on, the sounds of battle echoing through the facility. Raya's newfound skill with the Orion weapon proved invaluable as they encountered pockets of resistance from Zaxos's extremists. Her shots found their marks with increasing accuracy, creating openings for the team to advance. Meanwhile, in the main laboratory, Dr. Alara worked feverishly to stabilize the critical genetic samples. Her hands moved with practiced precision, despite the tremors rocking the outpost. She glanced up as Raya's voice crackled over the comm system. "Dr. Ilara, what's your status?" Raya asked, her tone urgent. "Almost there," Ilara replied, carefully transferring the last vial into a specially designed containment unit. "These samples are our best hope for understanding the full implications of the breeding program. I won't let them be destroyed." As Ilara secured the samples, Marcus hunched over a nearby terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he battled against the ancient security protocols. "Come on, you archaic piece of junk," he muttered, eyes scanning lines of code. A small victory brought a grim smile to his face as he managed to redirect a group of drones away from their allies. Back in the corridors, Raymond's team fought their way closer to the central computer core. The sounds of conflict grew louder, punctuated by the ominous creaking of the facility's stress structure. As they approached the core's entrance, a massive explosion rocked the outpost. Warning klaxons blared as the computer announced the imminent destruction of the entire facility. "The power core's been hit," Raymond shouted, steadying himself against the wall. "We're out of time." They burst into the central core chamber just as Zaxos initiated the final stage of the data purge. The Orion extremist leader stood at the main console, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Raymond didn't hesitate. He launched himself at Zaxos, tackling the larger Orion away from the controls. The two grappled fiercely, each fighting for control of the console. Zaxos' Orion strength gave him an advantage, but Raymond's persistence and combat training kept him in the fight. They traded blows, neither willing to give ground as the fate of their discoveries hung in the balance. Taking advantage of the distraction, one of the team members slipped to the console, working quickly to halt the data purge. "I've managed to save some of it," they called out, "but the damage to the core is accelerating the meltdown." Raymond, locked in a struggle with Zaxos, gritted his teeth. "Keep working. We can't lose everything we've discovered." As the battle raged in the computer core, Raya made a difficult decision. Using her royal authority, she ordered the evacuation of all non-essential personnel, including the Earth diplomats and Orion High Council representatives. "We need those ships," she commanded, her voice brooking no argument. "Everyone who isn't directly involved in securing our research needs to leave now." Her decisive action cut through the chaos, earning nods of respect from both humans and Orions. As the evacuation began, Raya turned her attention back to coordinating the defense of the main laboratory. In the genetics lab, Dr. Ilara enlisted the help of the remaining purist operatives to transport the stabilized samples. Despite their past differences, the gravity of the situation forged an unexpected alliance. "Handle these with extreme care," Ilara instructed, passing a containment unit to one of the operatives. "They're more valuable than you can imagine." The operative nodded solemnly, cradling the unit as if it were a newborn child. As the facility's structural integrity continued to deteriorate, Marcus finally broke through the last of the security protocols. He let out a triumphant shout as a subset of the security drones came under his control. "I've got them," he exclaimed, quickly reprogramming the drones to assist in the evacuation efforts. The machines whirred to life, moving to clear debris and defend against the remaining extremists. Back in the computer core, Raymond and Zaxos remained locked in combat. As they grappled near an exposed power conduit, Raymond saw an opportunity. He maneuvered Zaxos closer to the sparking cables, then made a split-second decision. "Zaxos, listen to me," Raymond said, his voice strained from exertion. "This place is coming down around us. If we don't leave now, we'll both die here. Is that what you want?" The Orion extremist hesitated, his eyes darting between Raymond and the failing systems around them. In that moment of uncertainty, Raymond pressed his advantage. "We can still get out of here," he continued. "Face the consequences of your actions, but live to see another day. What do you say?" Zaxos' grip loosened slightly, the fight draining from his eyes. I didn't want it to go this far," he admitted, his voice barely audible above the alarms. "Then help us," Raymond urged. "There's still time to salvage something from this disaster." As Zaxos nodded, accepting Raymond's offer, the outpost power core reached critical levels. A series of explosions rocked the lower levels, creating new fissures in the planet's surface. Raymond and Zaxos stumbled as the floor beneath them shifted, revealing a previously hidden chamber. As they regained their footing, they found themselves surrounded by holographic displays flickering to life. Wow, what is this place? Zaxos breathed, his eyes wide as he took in the ancient Orion technology. Raymond moved closer to one of the displays, his heart racing as he realized what they had discovered. It's a complete record of the Convergence Project, he said, his voice filled with awe. Everything they did, all the species they worked with, it's all here. But there was no time to fully appreciate the magnitude of their discovery. The facility's collapse was accelerating, and they needed to move quickly if they hoped to escape with their lives. As Raymond and Zaxos made their way back to the upper levels, they encountered the rest of the team. Together they raced through the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and leaping over widening chasms in the floor. Ahead, they could see the last shuttle waiting for them, its engines already warming up for takeoff. But between them and safety stretched a gaping fissure, growing wider by the second. Raya, standing at the shuttle's entrance, saw their predicament. Without hesitation, she raised the Orion energy weapon, focusing its power through her own biological signature. A shimmering bridge of energy formed across the chasm, fluctuating with each tremor that shook the outpost. "Hurry," she called out, her voice strained with effort. "I can't hold it for long." Raymond and the others raced across the energy bridge, feeling it weaken with each step. Humans and Orions alike found themselves supporting each other, ensuring that no one was left behind. As the last person crossed, Raya released her control of the weapon. The resulting energy discharge created a massive shockwave that rippled through the disintegrating outpost. Raymond rushed to Raya's side, supporting her as they hurried into the waiting shuttle. As the doors sealed behind them, the pilot wasted no time in launching the craft skyward. Through the shuttle's viewports, they watched as the outpost collapsed entirely, leaving behind a massive crater filled with the ruins of both the modern facility and the ancient Orion installation. As they broke through Zeta Prime's atmosphere, an uneasy silence fell over the survivors. The immediate danger had passed, but the consequences of their actions and the revelations about human Orion history deeply affected on everyone's minds. Raymond looked around the shuttle, taking in the diverse group of humans and Orions brought together by this crisis. His gaze fell on the secure container holding the precious genetic samples, then moved to Raya, who met his eyes with a mixture of exhaustion and purpose. The events at the outpost had forever changed the relationship between their two species. As the shuttle carried them towards an uncertain future, Raymond knew that their journey was a long way to go. The true impact of their discoveries was yet to be fully understood, and the challenges that lay ahead would test the newfound unity between humans and Orions in ways they could scarcely imagine. The shuttle's interior fell silent as the survivors processed the gravity of their situation. A sharp beep from the communications panel broke the tension. The pilot's voice filled the cabin. "Incoming transmission from the Orion High Council." Raymond exchanged a glance with Raya before moving to the console. He activated the holographic display, revealing the stern face of an Orion counselor. "This is Counselor Vex," the Orion stated, his voice crisp and authoritative. "You are ordered to dock immediately at the orbiting diplomatic station. Prepare for full quarantine procedures upon arrival." Raymond nodded. "Understood, Counselor. We'll comply." As the transmission ended, murmurs of concern rippled through the shuttle. Dr. Alara clutched the container of genetic samples tighter, her fingers tightening. The massive form of the Orion diplomatic station loomed before them, its sleek architecture a testament to advanced engineering. The shuttle maneuvered into a designated docking bay, locking into place with a soft thud. As the airlock cycled, a team of Orion medical staff in sealed biosuits awaited them. Their leader stepped forward, her voice slightly muffled through her helmet. "Please follow us to the quarantine area. We must conduct thorough examinations immediately." Raymond and Raya were escorted to a separate high-security section of the quarantine zone. The sterile white walls and advanced medical equipment created an atmosphere of clinical efficiency. Dr. Alara found herself in a state-of-the-art laboratory, carefully transferring the genetic samples to the station's containment units. She worked alongside Orion scientists, their shared scientific curiosity temporarily bridging the gap between their species. Hours passed as the survivors underwent extensive medical scans and tests. Raymond sat on an examination table, watching an Orion doctor analyze a holographic display of his DNA. The doctor's eyes widened. "This is unexpected," he murmured, enhancing a section of the display. "Your prolonged exposure to Orion genetic material has triggered some fascinating changes in your DNA structure." Raymond leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of changes?" "It appears your physical capabilities are being enhanced," the doctor explained. "Muscle density, bone strength, even potential lifespan, all showing signs of improvement." In an adjacent room, Raya underwent her own examination. The Orion medical staff worked with increased urgency, their movements betraying a mix of excitement and disbelief. An older Orion doctor approached Raya, his expression a combination of awe and concern. "Your Highness, we've detected something extraordinary. The energy discharge from the weapon has reactivated dormant genes in your reproductive system." Raya's breath caught in her throat. "What does that mean?" The doctor's eyes gleamed. "It means you may be one of the few Orions capable of natural reproduction. This could change everything for our species." As news of these developments spread through the station, a new arrival caused a stir among the human contingent. Ambassador Krell, the human representative to the Orion High Council, strode purposefully through the corridors, his diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the medical attire surrounding him. Krell made his way to the quarantine area, demanding a full briefing on the situation. "I need to know exactly what we're dealing with here," he insisted, his tone brooking no argument. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself in the station's central data hub, surrounded by holographic displays and humming servers. His fingers flew across the interfaces as he began the monumental task of collating and analyzing the salvaged data from the outpost. As he worked, fragments of information about other alien species involved in the Convergence project began to emerge. Marcus's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "There are more out there," he whispered to himself. "More compatible species across the galaxy." In the secure detention area, Zaxos sat in contemplative silence. Unbeknownst to him, a group of Orion scientists watched him through hidden cameras, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of monitors. "He's the key," one of them murmured. "With his knowledge, we could continue the Convergence project. We could fulfill our destiny." Another scientist nodded in agreement. "We need to get him out of there. The future of our species may depend on it." As these various threads of activity unfolded across the station, the Orion High Council convened an emergency session. The councilors debated fiercely, their voices echoing through the grand chamber. Councilor Vex stood, his voice cutting through the din. "We have a unique opportunity before us. With the reactivation of Princess Raya's fertility and the unexpected compatibility with the human Raymond, we must act swiftly to expand our breeding program." Murmurs of agreement and dissent rippled through the chamber. Another counselor spoke up. "But what of the ethical implications? We cannot simply order them to produce offspring." As the debate raged on, Raymond and Raya found themselves brought before the council. They stood side by side, acutely aware of the weight of expectation pressing down upon them. Councilor Vex addressed them directly. "In light of recent discoveries, we propose an immediate expansion of the breeding program. Your unique genetic compatibility offers our best chance at producing viable offspring and ensuring the future of our species." Raymond and Raya exchanged a glance, a mix of emotions passing between them. The proposal forced them to confront the reality of their feelings for each other and the enormous responsibilities they bore for their respective species. Before either could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Alert! Quarantine breach in Section 7. All personnel initiate containment protocols immediately." Chaos erupted as the council chamber emptied, with Raymond and Raya swept up in the rush to respond to the emergency. As they raced through the corridors, the fate of two species hung in the balance, their personal feelings entangled with the weight of galactic consequences. The station shuddered, and for a moment Raymond felt a surge of newfound strength coursing through his body. He exchanged a determined look with Raya as they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that their actions in the coming hours would shape the future of human-Orion relations for generations to come. "Come." The station rocked violently, sending Raymond and Raya stumbling against the corridor wall. "What was that?" Raya asked, steadying herself. Before Raymond could respond, the station's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. Unidentified fleet approaching Zeta Prime. This is not a drill. All hands to battle stations." Raymond's enhanced senses kicked in, his muscles tensing with newfound strength. He exchanged a quick glance with Raya, both understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to get to the command center," he said, already moving down the corridor. As they raced through the station, personnel rushed past them, some human, some Orion, all with looks of awe-inspiring panic on their faces. The blaring alarms and flashing red emergency lights created an atmosphere of controlled chaos. They burst into the command center to find Ambassador Krell and the Orion High Council representatives already gathered around a large holographic display. The image showed Zeta Prime, the diplomatic station, and a rapidly approaching fleet of ships. Counselor Vex turned as they entered. "Ah, Raymond, Princess Raya, your timing is impeccable." Ambassador Krell's face was grim as he addressed them. "We've detected a large fleet entering the system. Long-range scans show, well, it's unlike anything we've ever seen." The holographic display zoomed in on the approaching ships. Raymond's eyes widened as he took in the diverse array of vessel designs. Some were sleek and organic-looking, others angular and imposing. What struck him most was how different they all were from each other. "Those ships," Raya breathed, "they're not just from one species." A technician at a nearby console spoke up. "Confirmed, Your Highness. We're detecting at least 5 distinct ship designs, possibly more. Some match descriptions in our historical archives of species long thought extinct." The implications hit Raymond like a physical blow. "The Convergence Project," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't just humans and Orions. There were others." Ambassador Krell nodded gravely. "It appears so, and now they're here, at our doorstep." The station shuddered again as its defense systems activated, energy shields shimmering into existence around the structure. Counselor Vex turned to Raymond. "Your genetic enhancements make you uniquely suited to lead a defense team, if it comes to that. We need someone who can bridge the gap between our species." Raymond felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He nodded, accepting the role. Raya stepped forward. "I'll join him. As a liaison between our peoples, I can help coordinate our efforts." Some of the Orion officials shifted uncomfortably. One spoke up. "Your Highness, given your newfound potential, perhaps it would be wiser to keep you safe." Raya's eyes flashed with tenacity. "My place is where I can do the most good for our people. All our people." As the leaders debated strategy, a commotion at one of the science stations drew their attention. Dr. Alara burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Ambassador, counselors, you need to see this," she said, bringing up a new display. "I've made a breakthrough with the ancient genetic samples. They contain a key to rapid adaptation in humanoid species. This could revolutionize our integration efforts." The implications of her discovery hung in the air, adding a new layer of complexity to an already tense situation. Before anyone could fully process this information, Marcus's voice cut through the din. "I've decrypted their transmission." He manipulated his console and a translated message appeared on the main screen. "Greetings, children of the Convergence. We come in peace, seeking reunion with our long-lost kin. We request permission to dock and share knowledge." The command center fell silent as the weight of the message sank in. Ambassador Krell was the first to speak. "We can't simply allow an unknown force to dock with the station," he said, his diplomatic training evident in his measured tone. "But we can't ignore this opportunity either." After a heated discussion, a compromise was reached. A small delegation from the alien fleet would be allowed to board under heavy security, while the rest of the fleet maintained a safe distance. As preparations began, Raymond and Raya found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Security protocols were established, quarantine measures put in place, and diplomatic procedures hastily reviewed. In the midst of the preparations, alarms blared once again. A security officer's voice came over the comm system. "Alert! Detention breach in progress. Subject Zaxos has escaped containment. Raymond's enhanced muscles tensed. He turned to Raya, torn between his duty to recapture Zaxos and his role in the upcoming diplomatic meeting. Raya placed a hand on his arm. "Go," she said softly. "I'll handle things here. We need Zaxos contained before our guests arrive." With a nod of understanding, Raymond sprinted from the command center, assembling a security team as he went. As he raced through the station's corridors, he could feel the hum of its systems through the soles of his feet, his enhanced senses picking up minute vibrations. Meanwhile, Raya steeled herself for the diplomatic challenge ahead. She watched as the first shuttle from the alien fleet began its approach, knowing that the next few hours would shape the future of not just humans and Orions, but potentially all sentient life in the galaxy. As Raymond closed in on Zaxos' last known location, and Raya prepared to greet beings from across the stars, the fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance. The true test of the Convergence Project was about to begin. The true test of the Convergence Project was about to unfold on multiple fronts. Raymond sprinted through the station's corridors, his enhanced muscles propelling him forward with unexpected speed. He assembled a security team on the move, barking orders into his comm unit as they converged on Zaxos' last known location. "Team Alpha, secure the East Wing. Beta, with me," he commanded, feeling the subtle vibrations of the station through his feet. His heightened senses picked up minute details. The faint scent of ozone from overworked circuitry, the barely audible hum of power conduits behind the walls. As they entered the restricted area, Raymond held up a hand, signaling the team to halt. He closed his eyes, focusing on the subtle signs of Zaxos' passage. A faint scuff mark on the floor, a lingering warmth on a door handle. Clues invisible to normal human perception. "This way," he whispered, leading the team through a maze of corridors filled with sensitive Orion technology. They moved with practiced stealth, careful not to trigger any additional security measures. Meanwhile, in the station's primary hangar, Raya stood at the forefront of the welcoming committee. Ambassador Krell and representatives from the Orion High Council flanked her, their postures tense with anticipation. The alien shuttle's sleek form glided into the docking bay, its design unlike anything Raya had ever seen. As the airlock hissed open, Raya straightened her shoulders, projecting an aura of calm authority. 3 distinct alien beings emerged, each bearing subtle similarities to both humans and Orions. The lead alien, a tall, slender figure with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with every movement, stepped forward. "Greetings," the alien said, its voice a melodious blend of tones. "I am Zarax, last surviving member of the Zythian race. We come seeking our long-lost kin." Raya inclined her head in a gesture of respect. "Welcome to Zeta Prime, Zarax. I am Princess Raya of the Orion people. We are honored by your presence." Before the introductions could continue, alarms blared throughout the station. The hangar trembled, causing several members of the welcoming committee to stumble. In the restricted area, Raymond and his team had cornered Zaxos in a room filled with experimental Orion terraforming technology. Zaxos, his eyes wild with desperation, backed against a control panel. "Stay back," he shouted, his hand hovering over the unfamiliar equipment. "You have no idea what this can do." Raymond took a cautious step forward, his enhanced muscles coiled and ready to spring. "Zaxos, don't do anything rash. We can work this out." But Zaxos, in a fit of panic, slammed his hand down on the console. The room hummed to life, holographic displays flickering into existence around them. Raymond felt the air shift, becoming denser, more humid. "What have you done?" he demanded, watching as the room's environment began to rapidly change. Back in the hangar, Raya's diplomatic training kicked in as she assessed the situation. The alien delegates looked alarmed, their strange features contorting with concern. "Please, remain calm," Raya announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're experiencing a minor technical difficulty. I assure you, everything is under control." She turned to a nearby technician. "Connect me to environmental control, now." As Raya coordinated the station's response, Raymond grappled with the shifting conditions in the restricted area. The room cycled through various planetary environments. Arid heat gave way to freezing cold, then to a thick, soupy atmosphere that made breathing difficult. Raymond felt his body adapting to each change, his lungs expanding and contracting, his skin adjusting its permeability. He pushed through the discomfort, closing in on Zaxos. "Shut it down!" he yelled over the roar of simulated wind. Zaxos, overwhelmed by the malfunctioning technology, stumbled back. Raymond seized the opportunity, lunging forward with inhuman speed. He tackled Zaxos to the ground, pinning him as the room continued its chaotic transformations. With one hand holding Zaxos, Raymond reached for the control panel. His fingers danced over the alien interface, somehow understanding its complex systems. The room shuddered, then fell still, the holographic displays fading away. As the security team secured Zaxos, Raymond stood, marveling at how quickly his body had acclimated to the rapid changes. He tapped his comm unit. "Threat neutralized. Zaxos is in custody." In the aftermath of the crisis, Dr. Ilera burst into the command center, her eyes wide with excitement. "Ambassador, counselors, you need to see this," she said, bringing up a display of Raymond's bio-readings. "The rate of adaptation, it's unprecedented. The human-Orion genetic combination has unlocked something extraordinary." Ambassador Krell stroked his chin thoughtfully. "This could change everything. We need to expand our research immediately." As the station's leaders debated the implications of this discovery, Zarax approached Raya. "Your people handled this crisis admirably," he said. "Perhaps there is much we can learn from each other." Raya nodded, a spark of inspiration in her eyes. "Indeed, and I believe I know just the place for us to begin our collaboration." She turned to address the assembled group. "I propose we move our summit to the planet's surface. The ancient Orion facility there may hold answers for all of us." The suggestion sent a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. Ambassador Krell raised an eyebrow. "A bold move, Your Highness, but one with merit." As preparations for the planetary expedition began, Marcus burst into the room, clutching a datapad. "You're not going to believe what I've found in the archives," he said breathlessly. "The Convergence Project, it's bigger than we ever imagined." Raymond entered the command center, still adjusting his uniform after the confrontation with Zaxos. His eyes met Raya's across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. As the gravity of their situation settled over the assembled leaders, Raymond realized that their journey was just getting started. The command center buzzed with activity as plans were made for the descent to Zeta Prime's surface. Long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the ruins of the ancient Orion facility, adding an air of mystery to their impending expedition. As Raymond and Raya boarded the shuttle that would take them to the planet's surface, they knew that the next few hours would test the limits of their newfound alliance. The fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance, with the secrets of the Convergence Project waiting to be uncovered on the world below. The shuttles cut through Zeta Prime's atmosphere, their sleek forms gleaming in the alien sunlight. Raymond clutched the armrest of his seat, his enhanced senses picking up every minute vibration as they descended. Beside him, Raya's eyes were fixed on the screen, where the ruins of the ancient Orion facility loomed larger with each passing second. "Energy readings are off the chart," Dr. Alara announced from her station, her voice tinged with excitement and a hint of apprehension. "Whatever's down there, it's more active than we initially thought." Ambassador Krell leaned forward, his features set in a mask of diplomatic neutrality. "Let us hope it's a sign of discovery rather than danger." As the shuttles touched down on the planet's surface, Raymond's heightened awareness kicked into overdrive. He felt the subtle shift in the air, tasted the metallic tang of long-buried secrets stirring to life. The expedition team disembarked, their boots crunching on the dusty ground as they approached the partially reactivated facility. Zarax, the Zithian representative, moved with fluid grace as he joined Raymond and Raya at the head of the group. His iridescent skin shimmered in the alien light, casting prismatic patterns on the ancient stonework. "The energy, it calls to something deep within me," Zarax said, his melodious voice barely above a whisper. Raymond nodded, understanding the sentiment all too well. He could feel the facility's pulse, a rhythm that seemed to resonate with his altered DNA. As they neared the entrance, Previously hidden doorways flickered to life, holographic interfaces shimmering into existence. Raya stepped forward, her royal bearing evident in every movement. She placed her hand on one of the interfaces, and the entire facade of the ruins shifted, revealing a vast entryway that had been concealed for millennia. Incredible, Ambassador Krell breathed, his diplomatic mask slipping for a moment to reveal genuine awe. The team entered cautiously, Raymond taking point with his enhanced senses on high alert. The air inside was cool and dry, carrying the scent of ancient technology awakening from its long slumber. Lights activated as they moved deeper into the complex, illuminating corridors that branched off in all directions. "We should split up," Dr. Alara suggested, her scientific curiosity evident in her eager tone. "Cover more ground." Raymond shook his head. "Too risky. We don't know what kind of security systems might still be active." As if in response to his words, a holographic projection flickered to life in front of them. The image of an Orion scientist, dressed in the style of a bygone era, materialized. "Greetings, descendants," the hologram said, its voice echoing through the corridors. "You have entered the primary research facility of Project Convergence. Proceed with caution, for the secrets contained herein have the power to reshape the galaxy." The team exchanged glances, the weight of the moment settling upon them. Ambassador Krell cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should follow our guide." As they moved deeper into the facility, more holograms activated, each revealing another piece of the convergence puzzle. The recordings spoke of a grand vision, a galaxy united not just by alliances, but by shared genetic heritage. Raymond's mind raced as he processed the information. The implications were staggering, confirming Marcus's earlier discoveries and hinting at even greater revelations to come. Their path led them to a massive chamber dominated by a colossal supercomputer. Its panels pulsed with life, streams of data flowing across holographic displays. Dr. Alara rushed forward, her fingers flying over the ancient interfaces as she began the process of accessing the stored information. "This is incredible," she muttered, her eyes wide as she scanned the data. "The genetic archives here, they're beyond anything we've ever seen." Zarix joined her, his alien physiology allowing him to interface with the system in ways the others couldn't. Together, they delved into the vast repository of knowledge, uncovering the true scope of the Convergence project. While the scientists worked, Raymond felt a tug at his consciousness, a subtle pull leading him away from the main chamber. He caught Raya's eye, and without a word, she fell into step beside him. They navigated a series of smaller corridors, their path illuminated by the soft glow of reactivating systems. They came to a halt before a sealed door, its surface unmarked by any visible locking mechanism. Raymond placed his hand on the cool metal, feeling the thrum of energy beneath his palm. Raya stepped closer, her shoulder brushing against his. "Together," she said softly, placing her hand next to his. The door responded to their combined touch, recognizing the unique genetic signatures of human and Orion royalty. With a hiss of depressurization, it slid open, revealing a chamber filled with gleaming medical equipment. "This could be it," Raymond breathed, taking in the array of advanced technology, the key to solving the fertility issues. Before they could explore further, alarms blared throughout the facility. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and Raymond's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of massive machinery grinding to life deep below the surface. "What's happening?" Raya asked, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Raymond's mind raced, processing the influx of sensory information. "Something's been activated. We need to get back to the others." As they rushed back toward the main chamber, Raymond's comm unit crackled to life. Ambassador Krell's voice cut through the static. "We're locked in. The facility's enacted some kind of quarantine protocol." Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of persistence. They had come too far to be stopped now. As they ran, the facility continued to awaken around them, ancient systems surging to life after eons of dormancy. The secrets of convergence were finally coming to light, but at what cost? The corridors ahead pulsed with an eerie glow, and Raymond could feel the very air changing around them. Whatever had been set in motion, it was clear that their mission had taken an unexpected and potentially dangerous turn. The race to uncover the truth, and survive its revelation had only just begun. The ancient Orion technology, dormant for millennia, surged to life with unexpected ferocity. Raymond's enhanced senses picked up the subtle vibrations coursing through the facility's structure. He turned to Raya, his eyes narrowing with dedication. "We need to take control of this situation, now." As if on cue, Ambassador Krell's voice crackled over the comm system. "The facility's terraforming process has been activated. We're detecting significant changes to the surrounding landscape." Raymond's mind raced, formulating a plan. He addressed the gathered team, his voice steady and authoritative. "We need to manually override the facility's main control systems. It's our best chance to stabilize this situation." Raya nodded, her royal bearing evident even in the face of crisis. "Agreed, but the path to the central control room won't be easy. The facility's reconfiguration has likely created numerous hazards." "Then we'll need a small team," Raymond replied. "Raya and I will lead. We'll navigate the unstable areas and reach the control room." Dr. Alara looked up from the supercomputer's interface, her fingers still dancing across the holographic display. "I'll stay here with Zarax. We're close to extracting crucial genetic data. This could be the key to solving our fertility issues." Ambassador Krell stepped forward, his diplomatic mask firmly in place despite the chaos. "I'll coordinate with the remaining team members. We need to contain the terraforming effects before they spread too far." As Raymond and Raya prepared to depart, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Zaxos, still under guard, was speaking urgently to one of the security officers. "I know the layout of this place," Zaxos insisted. "I uncovered it during my earlier explorations. Let me help. It could mean the difference between success and failure." Raymond exchanged a wary glance with Raya. "We'll consider your input, but you're staying under guard. Any false move, and you'll be left behind." With their team assembled, Raymond led the way into the depths of the facility. The corridors ahead pulsed with an eerie, fluctuating light. The very walls seemed to shift and realign as they progressed, creating a disorienting labyrinth. Raymond's enhanced reflexes proved invaluable as they navigated the treacherous path. He leaped across a suddenly appearing chasm, using his superhuman strength to help the others across. Raya moved with grace and precision, her royal training evident in every calculated step. As they descended deeper into the facility, the challenges intensified. Malfunctioning defense systems sprang to life, forcing the team to dodge energy beams in holographic projections. Raymond's heightened awareness allowed him to anticipate each new threat, guiding the group to safety. "Watch out," he called, pulling Raya back just as a section of the floor gave way. The metal groaned and buckled, revealing a dizzying drop into the facility's lower levels. Raya steadied herself, her breath coming in short gasps. "Thank you," she said, her eyes meeting Raymond's. For a moment, the chaos around them faded, replaced by a growing sense of trust and connection. Their progress was interrupted by a crackling transmission from Dr. Alara. "Raymond, Raya, we've made a breakthrough. The Convergence Project, it's more advanced than we thought. They developed a method for creating genetic bridges between species. This could revolutionize our breeding program." As they processed this information, the facility shuddered violently. The walls around them began to reconfigure, revealing hidden chambers and passageways. Raymond's enhanced vision caught glimpse of something extraordinary through a newly formed opening. "Stasis pod," he breathed, peering into a vast chamber lined with sleek, alien containers. "There are preserved specimens from multiple species in here." Ambassador Krell's voice cut through the comm static. "This changes everything. We need to secure those specimens. The diplomatic implications alone?" "One problem at a time, Ambassador," Raymond interrupted. "We need to reach the control room first." As they pressed on, the facility's transformation intensified. Corridors rearranged themselves like a colossal puzzle, forcing the team to adapt their route constantly. Raymond's leadership shone through as he guided them through the ever-changing maze, his enhanced senses allowing him to navigate the shifting landscape. Finally, they arrived at the entrance to the central control room. But instead of an open door, they found themselves face to face with a shimmering holographic interface, a voice ancient yet crystal clear, emanated from the interface. I am the curator, guardian of this facility. To proceed, you must prove your worth as the culmination of the Convergence Project. Raymond and Raya exchanged a determined look. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together. As the curator's first test materialized before them, they stepped forward, ready to prove that their unique bond could unlock the secrets of interspecies compatibility and save not only themselves, but the future of multiple civilizations. The fate of their mission, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested on their ability to work together and overcome the curator's challenges. With the facility continuing its dangerous transformation around them, Raymond and Raya prepared to face whatever trials awaited them beyond the shimmering barrier. Holographic barrier. The air crackled with energy as Raymond and Raya faced the curator's final challenge. Your compatibility is unprecedented, the curator's voice echoed. But can you truly work as one? Raymond glanced at Raya, a silent understanding passing between them. They had come too far to falter now. Together, Raya said, echoing their earlier moment of unity. They moved in perfect synchronization, Raymond's enhanced reflexes complementing Raya's graceful precision. As the curator's defenses activated, Raymond vaulted over a sudden energy barrier, creating an opening for Raya to slide through. She rolled to her feet, immediately inputting a series of commands into a nearby console. The holographic barrier flickered, its integrity compromised. Raymond seized the opportunity, channeling his augmented strength into a focused strike. The barrier shattered, revealing the facility's main control panel. Alarms blared as Raymond and Raya rushed to the controls. The facility shuddered around them, corridors shifting and reforming at an alarming rate. We need to stabilize the structure, Raymond said, his fingers flying over the alien interface. Raya nodded, her royal training allowing her to quickly grasp the complex systems. I've found the terraforming controls. Initiating shutdown sequence. As they worked, the chaos outside began to subside. The violent reshaping of the landscape slowed, then stopped altogether. Through a nearby viewport, they could see the altered terrain, a bizarre mix of the planet's original features and the Convergence Project's artificial modifications. Raymond, Raya, status report. Ambassador Krell's voice crackled over the comm. We've taken control of the facility, Raymond responded. The terraforming process has been halted. A cheer erupted from the other end of the communication line, quickly followed by Dr. Alara's excited voice. Excellent work. We've just completed the data extraction, the genetic bridging information. It's revolutionary. As Raymond and Raya exited the control room, they found the rest of the team converging on their location. Dr. Alara's eyes shone with scientific fervor as she clutched a data pad to her chest. This could solve our fertility issues, she exclaimed, not just for humans and Orions, but for multiple species. Ambassador Krell stepped forward, his diplomatic mind already racing with possibilities. We need to establish an interspecies genetic council to oversee this research. The implications are too vast for any one species to handle alone. As the team discussed the formation of the council, Raymond's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of footsteps approaching. He turned to see Zaxos, still flanked by guards, being led into the chamber. I believe I've earned my place at this table, Zaxos declared, his eyes glinting with a mix of ambition and genuine curiosity. Before anyone could respond, a previously hidden door slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of sleek stasis pods. The team fell silent, awed by the sight of the preserved specimens from various alien species. Dr. Alara approached one of the pods, her hand hovering over its surface. These beings, they could be the key to understanding the full scope of the Convergence Project. As the implications of their discovery sank in, Raymond felt a gentle touch on his arm. He turned to find Raya standing close, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. What we've done here, she said softly, it changes everything, doesn't it? Raymond nodded, acutely aware of the weight of their actions. It does, but we're just getting started. Around them, the ancient facility hummed with renewed purpose. The team began the process of setting up a research outpost, integrating their equipment with the advanced convergence technology. As they worked, Raymond couldn't help but feel that they stood on the precipice of a new era, one that would redefine the very nature of interspecies relations. As news of their discovery spread, the first hints of diplomatic pressure began to filter through their communications. Ambassador Krell found himself fielding increasingly urgent messages from various galactic powers, all eager to stake their claim on the convergence technology. Amidst the growing political tension, Raymond and Raya found themselves thrust into the spotlight. Their successful navigation of the curator's trials marked them as unique specimens in the eyes of the scientific community. Researchers from multiple species clamored for the chance to study their genetic compatibility. As the day wore on, Dr. Alara approached them, her face alight with excitement. "We've begun preliminary trials using the genetic bridging techniques. The results are promising, but we need more data." Raymond and Raya exchanged a look, understanding the unspoken request. Their partnership had already yielded remarkable results, but the true test lay ahead. As the newly formed Interspecies Genetic Council convened its first meeting, a message arrived from the expedition's deep space scanners. It contained star maps that matched patterns found in the Convergence database, hinting at the existence of similar facilities on distant worlds. Raymond felt a familiar surge of anticipation. He turned to Raya, seeing the same readiness reflected in her eyes. "Another convergence site," he said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Raya nodded, her posture straightening with royal purpose. "We should be the ones to investigate." As they prepared to bring their proposal to the council, Raymond knew that their journey was far from finished. The secrets of the Convergence project were only beginning to unfold, promising a future filled with both incredible potential and unforeseen challenges. As they prepared to bring their proposal to the council, an urgent transmission interrupted the proceedings. "Incoming message from the Vega sector," announced a technician, her voice tinged with excitement. "They claim to have discovered an active convergence outpost." The council chamber erupted into a flurry of activity. Ambassador Krell quickly called for order, his commanding presence silencing the commotion. "This changes our plans," he said, turning to Raymond and Raya. "Your expertise is needed at this new location. We must redirect your mission immediately." Within hours, the expedition team assembled aboard an impressive interstellar vessel. The ship, christened the Stellar Convergence, was a marvel of multi-species engineering. Its sleek hull bore the hallmarks of human ingenuity, while Orion energy conduits pulsed beneath Zithian-designed sensor arrays. As Raymond strapped himself into the pilot's seat, he marveled at the seamless integration of technologies. Raya took her place beside him, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls with practiced ease. "Pre-flight checks complete," she reported, a hint of anticipation in her voice. "All systems optimal." Dr. Ilara bustled about the science bay, securing equipment and briefing her team of researchers. In the aft section, Captain Derek Strom, a grizzled human security officer, ran his team through final preparations. With a low hum, the stellar convergence lifted off from Zeta Prime's surface. As they broke atmosphere, Raymond engaged the faster-than-light drive, and the stars outside blurred into streaks of light. 12 hours into their journey, alarms blared across the bridge. Raymond's enhanced senses kicked into overdrive as he processed the flood of incoming data. "Spatial anomaly detected," he announced, his fingers flying over the controls. "It's directly in our path." Captain Strom's gruff voice came over the intercom. "Recommend immediate course correction. We can't risk—" "Wait," Raymond interrupted, a familiar tingling sensation at the base of his skull. "This isn't a natural phenomenon. It bears convergence signatures." Raya leaned in, studying the readouts. "He's right. The energy patterns match those we saw on Zeta Prime." "I think we should go through it," Raymond said, his enhanced intuition screaming that this was the right choice. Captain Strom's protest was cut short as Ambassador Krell's voice crackled over the comm. "Proceed, Raymond. We trust your judgment." With a nod to Raya, Raymond guided the stellar convergence into the heart of the anomaly. For a moment, reality seemed to bend around them. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and Raymond's enhanced reflexes were pushed to their limits as he navigated the turbulent region. Then as suddenly as it began, they were through. Raya gasped as she checked their position. "We've covered an impossible distance," she exclaimed. The anomaly acted as some sort of spatial shortcut. Their arrival in the target system was met with awe as the hidden space station came into view. It hung in orbit around a massive gas giant, its architecture a perfect blend of form and function. As they approached, the station's automated systems sprang to life. "We're being scanned," Raya reported, her eyes widening. "The station, it's initiating docking procedures on its own." Raymond felt a tingling sensation as the scan washed over him. "It's analyzing our genetic makeup," he realized. "It recognizes us as compatible specimens." The stellar convergence glided into a cavernous docking bay, guided by unseen forces. As the team disembarked, they found themselves face to face with an advanced security barrier. Raymond stepped forward, placing his hand on a shimmering panel. The barrier dissolved, granting him and Raya full access. "It seems we're given preferential treatment," Raya observed, noting the frustrated looks on some of their teammates' faces. Dr. Ilara approached, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "This level of genetic recognition is astounding. We must investigate further." As they ventured deeper into the station, Raymond and Raya found themselves drawn to a vast laboratory complex. The equipment within defied description, making even the advanced technology of the stellar convergence seem primitive by comparison. "Look at this," Raya breathed, gesturing to a device that seemed to manipulate strands of light. "It's altering genetic code in real time." Dr. Ilara, granted limited access to the lab, immediately began analyzing the technology. "This could revolutionize our entire understanding of genetics," she muttered, her fingers flying over her datapad. Their exploration led them to a secured section of the station. Within, they discovered a database containing genetic samples from thousands of species. Raymond's enhanced vision picked out names and designations he had never encountered before. "Many of these species are unknown," he said, scrolling through the list. "Some are even marked as extinct." The implications of their discovery were staggering. As they relayed the information back to the Interspecies Genetic Council, Raymond could almost feel the excitement radiating through the comm channels. Their progress was interrupted by a sudden surge of energy throughout the station. Lights flickered, and dormant systems hummed to life. "We've activated something," Raya realized, racing to a nearby console. "It's a communication array. It's broadcasting to other convergence facilities." As the signal pulsed out into the depths of space, Raymond's enhanced hearing picked up a distant but growing chorus of responses. The convergence network was awakening, and with it, the attention of the galaxy was turning toward their location. Captain Strom's voice crackled over the comm, tight with tension. "We've got company, multiple vessels entering the system, all on an intercept course." Raymond and Raya exchanged a determined look. They had unlocked a power beyond imagination, and now they would have to defend it. As they raced to the station's control center, Raymond knew that their greatest challenge was just beginning. As Raymond and Raya raced to the station's control center, alarms blared throughout the facility. The couple's enhanced abilities kicked into overdrive as they interfaced with the station systems, their minds merging with the ancient technology. "Activating defense protocols," Raymond announced, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. Raya nodded, her focus intense as she channeled her royal training into coordinating the station's responses. Energy shields flickered to life around the station, their iridescent glow a stark contrast against the void of space. The approaching vessels entered weapons range, their intentions clear as they opened fire. The first volley of energy beams splashed harmlessly against the shields, dissipating in brilliant flashes of light. Captain Strom's gruff voice crackled over the comm. "Stellar convergence moving to defensive position will provide additional coverage for the station's blind spots." Raymond watched as their ship maneuvered gracefully, its multi-species technology complementing the station's defenses perfectly. The combined shield matrix created a formidable barrier, frustrating the attackers' initial assault. In the research hub, Dr. Ilara's eyes widened as she pored over the station's database. "Eureka!" she exclaimed, her fingers flying over the controls. I found something. There's a network of dormant defense satellites scattered throughout the system. Can you activate them? Raya asked, her voice strained as she redirected power to failing shield sectors. Already on it, Dr. Alara replied, initiating reactivation sequence now. As the battle intensified, long-forgotten sentinels stirred to life. Massive satellites, their designs and elegant fusion of form and function, powered up weapons systems that had lain dormant for millennia. The attacking fleet, caught off guard by this new threat, found themselves suddenly outgunned and outmaneuvered. Several enemy ships broke formation, retreating to a safe distance. However, a core group of determined attackers pressed on, their weapons searching for weaknesses in the station's defenses. During a brief lull in the fighting, sensors detected a new arrival. A sleek vessel, its hull adorned with the insignia of the Interspecies Genetic Council, dropped out of faster-than-light travel. This is Ambassador Lyra Voss of the ISV Harmony, a calm voice transmitted across all frequencies. We are here in response to Captain Strom's distress call. I urge all parties to cease hostilities immediately. Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of relief. Ambassador Voss's reputation as a skilled negotiator preceded her, offering a glimmer of hope in diffusing the tense situation. As the ambassador opened communications with the attacking fleet, Raymond and Raya redoubled their efforts to unlock the station's full potential. Their enhanced biology allowed for unprecedented integration with the convergent systems, but the strain was beginning to show. Sweat beaded on Raymond's forehead as he interfaced with the station's core. I think I've found something, he said, his voice tight with concentration. It's a long-range communication array. If we can activate it... Raya nodded, understanding the implications. Together, they focused their combined abilities on reactivating the ancient system. Power surged through long-dormant conduits as the array hummed to life. A burst of energy pulsed outward, carrying with it a message encoded in the language of the convergence. Across the galaxy, dormant outposts stirred, responding to the call of their awakened sibling. The sudden influx of data threatened to overwhelm the station's systems. Alarms blared as power fluctuations rippled through the facility. Captain Strom and his security team raced through the corridors, working to stabilize critical systems and prevent a catastrophic overload. In the midst of the chaos, Ambassador Voss's diplomatic efforts bore fruit. Her measured words and logical arguments convinced the majority of the attacking fleet to stand down. The promise of shared access to the convergence technology proved a powerful incentive for cooperation. As the immediate threat subsided, Raymond and Raya's enhanced bodies finally reached their limits. The couple collapsed, their neural pathways overloaded from the prolonged interface with the station systems. Medical teams from both the Stellar Convergence and the ISV Harmony rushed to their aid, transferring them to advanced medical pods for emergency treatment. Dr. Ilara, her face etched with concern, pored over their medical data. Fascinating, she murmured, her scientific curiosity warring with her concern for her colleagues. The genetic therapy they underwent is progressing far beyond our initial projections. Their DNA is showing signs of further hybridization between human and Orion genomes. As Raymond and Raya fought for stability in their medical pods, the station around them buzzed with activity. Representatives from various species, including former adversaries, gathered to discuss the implications of the Convergent Station's reactivation. Ambassador Voss, her diplomatic skills tested to their limits, began the delicate process of establishing protocols for shared access to the facility. The arrival of additional research vessels from the Interspecies Genetic Council added new voices to the already complex negotiations. In the medical bay, Raymond stirred, his enhanced senses slowly coming back online. Through the haze of neural fatigue, he reached out, searching for Raya's presence. Their fingers intertwined, a gesture of comfort and solidarity in the face of an uncertain future. As teams of scientists from multiple species began their exploration of the station in earnest, the full scope of the Convergence Project's potential impact on galactic civilization started to take shape. The events set in motion by Raymond and Raya's expedition promised to reshape the future of interspecies relations in ways no one could have predicted. In the depths of the station, long-dormant systems continued to awaken, each new discovery raising as many questions as it answered. The convergence technology, with its vast potential for both unity and conflict, stood poised to usher in a new era for all sentient beings in the galaxy. The events set in motion by Raymond and Raya's expedition promised to reshape the future of interspecies relations in ways no one could have predicted. As the couple lay unconscious in their medical pods, the station hummed with activity, scientists and diplomats alike working tirelessly to unravel the mysteries of the convergence technology. Dr. Ilara, her eyes rimmed with dark circles from countless hours of research, pored over the extensive genetic data obtained from the station. Her fingers flew across holographic displays, correlating vast amounts of information. Suddenly, she gasped, her eyes widening in realization. "This is incredible," she whispered, double-checking her findings. "We've done it." She rushed to the medical bay, where Raymond and Rhea lay in their pods, their vitals slowly stabilizing. Captain Strom stood nearby, his face etched with concern. "Captain, I need to speak with Ambassador Voss immediately," Dr. Alara said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We've made a breakthrough." Within hours, Ambassador Lyra Voss had convened an emergency meeting aboard the ISV Harmony. The ship's conference room buzzed with tension as representatives from human, Orion, and Zithian governments took their seats. Dr. Alara stood at the front, her data pad clutched tightly in her hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ambassador Voss began, her voice calm but filled with gravity. "Dr. Ilara has made a discovery that could change the course of our species' futures." Dr. Alara stepped forward, her voice steady despite her nerves. "We've found a method to safely accelerate and stabilize the hybridization process between humans and Orions. This could potentially solve the fertility issues plaguing both our species." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, questions, and exclamations overlapping. Ambassador Voss raised her hand, silencing the delegates. "I propose we form a galactic genetic accord," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "A treaty to ensure the ethical use and distribution of this knowledge." As diplomats debated the implications of the discovery, Captain Strom and his security team delved deeper into the station's mysteries. They moved through dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing in the ancient halls. "Sir, over here," called one of his officers, gesturing towards a hidden panel. With a grunt, Strom pried it open, revealing a secret passage. The team found themselves in a hidden laboratory, filled with equipment far more advanced than anything they had seen before. Strom's eyes narrowed as he examined a series of containment units. "These genetic samples," he muttered, "they don't match anything in our database." Back in the medical bay, Raymond stirred, his enhanced senses slowly coming back online. He blinked, his vision adjusting to the bright lights. Beside him, Raya groaned softly, her fingers twitching. Dr. Alara rushed to their side, her eyes widening as she examined their vital signs. "Fascinating," she breathed. "Raymond, your cellular structure, it's showing increased resilience, almost Orion-like. And Raya, your neural patterns are evolving." As the couple regained consciousness, they became aware of subtle changes in their bodies. Raymond flexed his hand, marveling at the newfound strength coursing through his muscles. Raya closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the clarity of her thoughts. "What's happened to us?" Raya asked, her voice hoarse. Dr. Alara smiled, her excitement barely suppressed. "You've become the first successful human-Orion hybrids. Your prolonged interaction with the station's systems has accelerated the process we've been studying." News of their transformation spread quickly through the station. Scientists from various species clamored for the opportunity to study the couple, while diplomats argued over the implications of their new abilities. Ambassador Voss, recognizing the need for a permanent research presence, authorized the establishment of a research outpost on the Convergence Station. Dr. Ilara was appointed lead scientist, her expertise and familiarity with the project making her the ideal candidate. As Raymond and Raya underwent a battery of tests, Captain Strom continued his investigation into the hidden laboratory. He hunched over a console, decrypting a series of encrypted messages. "Chimera Syndicate," he read aloud, his brow furrowing. "Who the hell are they?" The discovery of this secretive organization sent shockwaves through the newly formed Galactic Genetic Accord. Emergency meetings were called, and security measures around all known convergence facilities were tightened. Amid the growing tensions, Raymond and Raya found themselves at the center of a scientific maelstrom. Their bodies, still adapting to the hybridization process, became living laboratories for researchers across the galaxy. "We need to do more," Raymond said to Raya as they prepared for another round of tests. "Our abilities could be the key to unlocking more of the station's secrets." Raya nodded, her enhanced mind already formulating potential strategies. "We should offer to explore the dormant sections of the station. Our hybrid physiology might allow us to interface with systems that have remained inactive for millennia." Their request was quickly approved, and soon the couple found themselves venturing into unexplored areas of the vast station. They moved through silent corridors, their enhanced senses alert for any signs of ancient technology stirring to life. As they entered a massive chamber, lights flickered to life, illuminating rows upon rows of sleek, metallic pods. Raymond approached one, wiping away a layer of dust to reveal a small window. "Raya," he called, his voice tight with awe. "You need to see this." Inside the pod, perfectly preserved, lay a creature unlike anything they had ever seen before. Its features were a blend of familiar and alien, a testament to the genetic mastery of the Convergence Project's creators. Raya's enhanced mind raced, processing the implications of their discovery. "These must be viable specimens of extinct species," she breathed. "This chamber, it's a genetic ark." As they relayed their findings to Dr. Ilara and the research team, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Captain Strom's voice crackled over the comm system. "Unidentified vessel approaching," he announced, tension evident in his voice. "All personnel to alert stations." Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of tenacity. They had unlocked secrets beyond imagination, and now they faced a new challenge. As they raced towards the control center ready to defend their discoveries, they knew that the true purpose of the Convergence Project was about to be revealed. As Raymond and Raya braced themselves for a potential conflict, the unidentified vessel slowed its approach, coming to a halt just outside the station's defensive perimeter. "We're receiving a transmission," announced one of the bridge officers, her fingers dancing across the control panel. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing a figure unlike any they had encountered before. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but with an ethereal quality that seemed to shift and flow like liquid light. "Greetings, inheritors of the Convergence," the being spoke, its voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "We are the progenitors, and we have come to reclaim our legacy." A collective gasp rippled through the command center. Ambassador Voss stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in despite the shock of the moment. "On behalf of the united species of this station, I welcome you," she said, her voice steady. "We have many questions about the Convergence Project and your role in it." The progenitor nodded, its form shimmering slightly. "All will be revealed in time. We request permission to dock and access the station's core systems." After a brief consultation with Captain Strom and the other leaders present, Ambassador Voss granted the request. As the progenitor ship docked, Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of persistence. "We should accompany them," Raymond said, flexing his enhanced muscles. "Our hybrid abilities might give us an edge if things go south." Raya nodded in agreement, her mind already racing with possibilities. The progenitor delegation, led by their chief scientist Zayla, was escorted to the central control room. Raymond and Raya followed closely, their senses on high alert. As they entered the vast chamber, Zayla approached the main console, its form seeming to merge with the technology. "We must access the station's deepest protocols," it explained, gesturing for Raymond and Raya to join it. Hesitantly, the hybrid couple stepped forward, placing their hands on the interface panels. The moment they made contact, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies. Their minds expanded, connecting with the station's systems on a level they had never experienced before. Suddenly, the entire facility hummed with power. Walls began to shift, revealing hidden chambers and passageways. New technologies activated throughout the station, causing alarms to blare and confused shouts to echo through the corridors. "What's happening?" Captain Strom's voice crackled over the comm system. "The station is transforming," Raya replied, her voice filled with awe. It's evolving. As the transformation continued, Dr. Alar and her team were busy in the research lab, analyzing genetic samples provided by the progenitors. Her eyes widened as she examined the results. "This is incredible," she muttered, turning to her colleagues. "The progenitor's DNA contains markers from multiple species, including humans and Orions. They're hybrids themselves." Meanwhile, Captain Strom's investigation into the Chimera Syndicate took an unexpected turn. His team discovered a hidden transmitter buried deep within the station's infrastructure. "Sir, this device has been sending data to an unknown location," reported one of his officers. "We've managed to trace the signal to an uncharted star system." Strom's eyes narrowed. "Prepare a team for a recon mission. We need to find out who's been receiving this information and why." As news of the progenitor's arrival spread, Ambassador Voss found herself organizing an emergency session of the Galactic Genetic Accord. Representatives from various species gathered in the station's newly revealed Grand Assembly Hall, their voices a cacophony of excitement and concern. "Order, please," Voss called out, her voice cutting through the din. "We must discuss the implications of these new developments and how they will affect our interstellar relations." Back in the central control room, the station's transformation reached its climax. A massive chamber at the core of the facility was revealed, containing a device of breathtaking complexity. "Behold the Nexus," Zayla announced, its form pulsing with excitement. "The central hub of the entire convergence network. With its activation, we can link all known convergence facilities across the galaxy." As Raymond and Rhea interfaced with the Nexus, they felt their abilities surge to new heights. Their hybrid physiology seemed to resonate with the ancient technology in ways that even the progenitors hadn't anticipated. "Your compatibility with the Nexus is extraordinary," Zayla observed, its form shimmering with what appeared to be surprise. "It seems the human-Orion genetic combination holds more potential than we ever imagined." Dr. Alara's voice came over the comm system, her words tumbling out in a rush of excitement. "We've made a breakthrough in understanding the accelerated hybridization process. We've developed a prototype treatment that could allow for controlled genetic modifications in subjects from various species." As the implications of this news sank in, the Galactic Genetic Accord erupted into heated debate. The potential benefits and risks of such technology were enormous, and the ethical considerations were complex. Captain Strom, meanwhile, was assembling a team for the expedition to the uncharted star system. "We need the best of the best," he told his officers. "This mission could be dangerous, but it's crucial we find out who's behind the Chimera Syndicate." As the various threads of activity unfolded across the station, Raymond and Rhea continued their work with the Nexus. They uncovered a vast database of genetic templates containing information on thousands of species from across the galaxy. These templates, Zayla explained, its form flickering with what seemed like reverence, were collected to preserve biodiversity in the face of cosmic threats. They are the key to the Convergence Project's ultimate goal. Suddenly, the stasis pods containing extinct species began to show signs of activation. Lights flickered on their control panels, and the preservation fluids within began to circulate. "It's time," Zayla announced, its form pulsing with anticipation. These specimens were meant to be reintroduced once suitable habitats were prepared through the Convergence Project's terraforming capabilities. As the Nexus activation sequence neared completion, tension mounted throughout the station. Ships from multiple species formed a defensive perimeter around the facility, anticipating potential threats from those who might seek to control or destroy the Convergence network. Raymond and Rhea stood at the heart of it all, their hands intertwined as they interfaced with the Nexus. They could feel the pulse of the entire network, a web of energy and information spanning the galaxy. "Are you ready?" Raymond asked, looking into Rhea's eyes. She nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Let's make history." With a final surge of energy, the Nexus activated. A pulse of power rippled through the Convergence network, awakening dormant facilities across the galaxy. As systems long silent hummed to life, the station's sensors suddenly lit up with multiple alerts. "Unidentified vessels entering the system," Captain Strom's voice rang out over the comm system. "Multiple vectors. All hands to battle stations." Raymond and Raya exchanged a look of commitment. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, standing at the threshold of a new era for all sentient beings in the galaxy. Galaxy. The moment of anticipation was shattered by the urgent blare of alarms. Multiple unidentified vessels entering the system. Captain Strom's voice crackled over the intercom, tension evident in his tone. All personnel to battle stations. Raymond and Raya exchanged a determined look. Without a word, they moved in unison towards the station's defense control systems. Their hands flew across the interface, activating the advanced defensive measures that had lain dormant for millennia. Shields at maximum capacity, Raya reported, her enhanced mind processing the data streams at lightning speed. Weapon systems online and targeting. Captain Strom's voice came through again. Allied ships are forming a defensive perimeter. Be ready for anything. As the unknown vessels drew closer, their true nature became apparent. The fleet was a mix of sleek, predatory ships bearing the insignia of the Chimera Syndicate and alien crafts of unknown origin. Their approach was aggressive, leaving no doubt as to their intentions. The space around the convergence station erupted into chaos as the first volleys were exchanged. Energy beams lanced across the void, met by the station's newly awakened defenses. Raymond and Raya worked in perfect synchronization, their hybrid physiology allowing them to interface with the Nexus at an unprecedented level. Rerouting power to the forward shields, Raymond called out, his fingers dancing across the controls. They're concentrating their fire on the docking bay. Raya nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Initiating countermeasures. Our hybrid abilities are giving us an edge they didn't expect. In the research lab, Dr. Alara and her team scrambled to secure their vital data. Initiate emergency backup protocol Alpha, she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Transmit all critical information to secure facilities across Allied space. As the battle raged outside, Ambassador Voss maintained a constant stream of communication with the Galactic Genetic Accord members. We need immediate assistance, she urged, her diplomatic training evident in her calm demeanor. The convergence station is under attack by unknown forces. The station shuddered as a particularly powerful blast struck home. Captain Strom's voice came over the comm system, urgent and focused. We have a breach in Sector 7. Chimera Syndicate operatives have boarded the station. Raymond and Raya shared a quick glance. We need to help, Raymond said, already moving towards the exit. Agreed, Raya replied, falling into step beside him. The Nexus defenses are holding for now. We're more needed on the ground. They raced through the corridors, their enhanced senses on high alert. The sounds of battle grew louder as they approached Sector 7. They rounded a corner to find Captain Strom and his security team engaged in intense close-quarters combat with the Syndicate intruders. Raymond leapt into action, his hybrid strength allowing him to easily overpower one of the attackers. Raya moved with blinding speed, disarming two more before they could even register her presence. Glad you could join us, Captain Strom grunted, firing his weapon at a retreating Syndicate operative. The fighting led them towards the chamber containing the stasis pods with extinct species. As they entered, Raymond's enhanced vision caught sight of a Syndicate member attempting to access one of the pods. Stop them, he shouted, launching himself across the room. But it was too late. The pod's systems had been compromised, and alarms began to blare as emergency revival procedures initiated. Across the chamber, other pods began to activate, their long-dormant occupants stirring to life. As the last of the intruders were subdued, Captain Strom received an urgent communication. Sir, one of the Syndicate ships has broken through our defenses. They've stolen genetic samples from multiple extinct species. Organize a pursuit team immediately, Strom ordered. We can't let them escape with those samples. Meanwhile, in the central control room, Zayla approached Ambassador Voss and Dr. Alara. There is another option, the progenitor said, its form shimmering with intensity. The Nexus contains a powerful defense mechanism capable of neutralizing all hostile technology within the star system. Dr. Alara's eyes widened. The energy requirements for such a system would be enormous. It could overload our power grid. Ambassador Voss weighed the options quickly. The risk to the station is great, but the risk of losing the convergence project to our enemies is greater. Activate the defense mechanism. Raymond and Raya returned to the central control room, their bodies showing signs of the intense combat they had just endured. Without hesitation, they stepped up to the Nexus interface, preparing to initiate the activation sequence. As their hands touched the controls, energy surged through their bodies. The strain on their hybrid physiology was immediate and intense. Alarms began to sound as Dr. Alara monitored their bioreadings. "Their cellular structure is destabilizing," she reported, her voice tight with concern. "We need to abort the process." But Raymond and Raya persisted, their faces set with unwavering focus. The Nexus hummed with increasing power, the energy building to a crescendo. Outside, the battle reached its peak. Ships exchanged fire. Explosions bloomed in the silence of space. And then, in an instant, everything changed. A massive pulse of energy burst forth from the station, expanding outward at incredible speed. As it washed over the attacking fleet, their ships went dark, weapons and engines failing simultaneously. Inside the station, systems flickered and failed as the pulse drained their power. Raymond and Raya collapsed to the floor, their bodies racked with pain from the immense strain of activating the Nexus defense mechanism. As emergency teams raced to stabilize the station's critical systems, Dr. Alara led a team to the medical bay, where Raymond and Raya lay unconscious. Their condition was critical, their hybrid cells showing signs of rapid degradation. "We need to stabilize them," Dr. Alara ordered, her mind already formulating potential treatments. "Prep the gene therapy suite and contact the progenitor scientists. We're going to need their expertise." In the aftermath of the battle, Ambassador Voss began the delicate task of negotiating with the disabled ships. "This is Ambassador Voss of the Convergence Station," she broadcast. "Your vessels have been neutralized. We offer amnesty in exchange for your full cooperation and information." As the station's long-range sensors detected a new wave of incoming ships bearing the markings of the Galactic Genetic Accord, Captain Strom received a report from his pursuit team. "We've recovered some of the stolen genetic samples," the team leader reported, "but one syndicate ship managed to escape the system. We don't know how many samples they got away with." Captain Strom's face hardened at the news. "Understood. Return to base immediately. We need to regroup and assess our situation." As the station entered a state of heightened alert, the various factions aboard began to grapple with the new reality they faced. The attack had exposed vulnerabilities in the Convergence network and demonstrated the true value of its genetic secrets. In the medical bay, Dr. Alara and the progenitor scientists worked tirelessly to save Raymond and Raya. Their hybrid physiology, once their greatest strength, now posed a unique challenge as they fought for survival. The Convergence station, battered but unbroken, stood at the center of a galactic storm. As repairs began and security measures were reassessed, one thing became clear to all. The race for genetic supremacy had only just begun. As the dust settled from the intense battle, the Convergence station buzzed with renewed activity, its corridors filled with a mix of urgency and hope. In the medical bay, Dr. Alara and her team of progenitor scientists worked tirelessly over the unconscious forms of Raymond and Raya. The hybrid couple lay motionless on adjacent beds, their bodies racked by the strain of activating the Nexus defense mechanism. "Their cellular structure is breaking down at an alarming rate," Dr. Alara reported, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of their genetic makeup. "We need to stabilize them before the damage becomes irreversible." A progenitor scientist, its form shimmering with concentrated energy, approached the beds. "We may have a solution," it communicated, its thoughts resonating directly in Dr. Alara's mind. "A combination of our most advanced genetic therapy and Convergence technology." Dr. Alara nodded, her face set with perseverance. "Let's proceed. Prepare the gene therapy suite and bring in the portable Convergence interface." As the medical team sprang into action, Ambassador Voss stood on the command deck, coordinating with the newly arrived Galactic Genetic Accord ships. The space around the station was now filled with a formidable array of vessels, their very designs a testament to the diversity of the Alliance. "Position your ships in a defensive sphere," Voss instructed, her voice calm but authoritative. "We can't risk another surprise attack." Captain Strom, standing beside her, added, I'm implementing new security protocols throughout the station. We're increasing surveillance and tightening access controls to all sensitive areas. In a specially prepared containment area, a team of xenobiologists carefully monitored the prematurely revived specimens from the damaged stasis pods. Each ancient life form was housed in a customized environment, meticulously recreated based on data from the Convergence genetic database. Dr. Kira, the lead xenobiologist, stood before a pod containing an avian-like creature. Its iridescent feathers shimmered as it tilted its head, studying the scientist with eyes that reflected an unsettling intelligence. Remarkable, Dr. Kira breathed, making notes on her datapad. Its cognitive functions are off the charts. We may be looking at a level of intelligence that rivals or even surpasses our own. As the containment area buzzed with activity, the station's central meeting hall was filled with the voices of heated debate. Representatives from various species of the Galactic Genetic Accord had convened for an emergency session, their different languages blending into a cacophony of concern and speculation. Ambassador Voss stood at the center of the gathering, her voice cutting through the noise. The recent attack has made it clear that the power of the Convergence project is too great to be left unguarded. I propose the formation of an interspecies task force to oversee all convergence-related research and development. The proposal was met with a mix of approval and skepticism, but before the debate could intensify, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Dr. Alara burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. Ambassador, Captain, she called out, Raymond and Raya are showing signs of improvement. The experimental treatment is working. In the medical bay, Raymond's eyes fluttered open. He blinked, disoriented, before turning his head to see Raya on the adjacent bed. Their eyes met, and in that instant, something extraordinary happened. Raya? Raymond thought, his lips remaining still. Raymond? Raya's voice echoed in his mind, her own mouth not moving. How is this possible? Dr. Alara, observing their brainwave patterns on a nearby monitor, gasped. Incredible. They appear to be communicating telepathically. As Raymond and Raya marveled at their newfound connection, Captain Strom received an urgent communication. His pursuit team had traced the escaped syndicate ship to a dense asteroid field in a neighboring system. Prepare a stealth vessel, Strom ordered. We're going after those stolen genetic samples. Meanwhile, in the engineering section, a diverse team of technicians huddled around a complex array of equipment. They were attempting to reverse engineer the Nexus defense mechanism, their goal to create a scaled-down version for wider deployment. If we can replicate this technology, Chief Engineer Zora explained, her antennae twitching with excitement, we could protect individual planets and outposts from future attacks. As the station hummed with activity, long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures from several nearby star systems. Ambassador Voss, upon receiving the report, immediately began organizing expedition teams. We need to secure those awakening convergence facilities, she declared. There's no telling who else might be after them. In the containment area, Dr. Kira made a breakthrough with the avian creature. Using a series of hand gestures, she managed to establish a rudimentary form of communication. The creature mimicked her movements, then added its own, conveying complex ideas through a dance-like sequence of motions. This could revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric galactic civilization, Dr. Kira reported, her voice trembling with awe. As the day cycle on the station drew to a close, Raymond and Raya, now fully conscious and their conditions stabilized, prepared to meet with the Galactic Genetic Accord representatives. They stood hand in hand, their mental connection humming with shared thoughts and emotions. Are you ready for this? Raymond asked silently. Raya squeezed his hand, her mental voice resolute. Together, we can face anything. They stepped into the meeting hall, the eyes of countless species turning to regard them. As successful human-Orion hybrids, they represented a living bridge between worlds, a symbol of what the Convergence Project could achieve. Ambassador Voss approached them, her expression a mix of relief and anticipation. Raymond, Raya, she said, her voice carrying across the hushed room. We have much to discuss about the future of interspecies relations and the ethical use of convergence technology. As the couple took their seats at the center of the gathering, the weight of their responsibility settled upon them. They were at the heart of a new era in galactic history, poised to shape the future of genetic research and navigate the complex web of interstellar politics. The meeting began, voices rising in debate once more. Outside the station, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if bearing witness to the momentous discussions taking place within. The fate of countless species hung in the balance, and the journey ahead promised to be one of unprecedented discovery and challenge. As Raymond and Raya stood poised to enter the meeting hall, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over them. Raymond stumbled, his hand slipping from Raya's grasp as he braced himself against the wall. "Raymond!" Raya's voice echoed in his mind, tinged with concern. Before he could respond, a searing pain shot through his body. Raya clutched her head, her face contorted in agony. Ambassador Voss, who had been about to usher them into the meeting, quickly tapped her communicator. "Medical emergency in Corridor B, outside the main meeting hall," she barked. "Dr. Alara, report immediately." Within moments, Dr. Alara and her team arrived, their faces etched with worry as they assessed the hybrid couple's condition. "We need to get them to the medical bay now," Dr. Alara ordered, her voice tight with urgency. As Raymond and Raya were rushed to the medical bay on hovering gurneys, their bodies began to undergo visible changes. Raymond's muscles rippled and expanded beneath his uniform, while Raya's eyes darted rapidly, as if processing vast amounts of information. In the medical bay, a diverse team of specialists gathered around the couple. Dr. Alara's fingers flew over the holographic interface, analyzing the flood of data from their bioscans. "Their hybrid physiology is undergoing rapid mutation," she reported, her antennae twitching with a mix of concern and fascination. "Raymond's body is developing enhanced Orion physical traits, while Raya's neural patterns are shifting to match advanced human cognitive functions." A progenitor scientist floated closer, its energy form pulsing with interest. "This is unprecedented," it communicated directly into the minds of the medical team. "The experimental treatment has triggered a cascade of genetic expression we never anticipated." As the medical team worked feverishly to stabilize Raymond and Raya, alarms blared throughout the station. Captain Strom's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, report to emergency stations. We have a critical system failure in the containment area." Dr. Ilara's head snapped up, her eyes widening. "The ancient species," she breathed. Turning to her team, she issued rapid-fire orders. "Continue monitoring Raymond and Raya. I need to lead the response team to the containment area." Racing through the corridors, Dr. Alara assembled a group of xenobiologists and environmental specialists. They arrived at the containment area to find chaos. Temperature gauges fluctuated wildly, and atmospheric composition readings flashed warning signals on every display. "We need to stabilize these habitats now," Dr. Alara shouted over the din of alarms. "Each species has unique requirements. Work in teams and prioritize life support systems." As they scrambled to adjust controls and reroute power, Dr. Alara noticed movement in the avian creature's enclosure. The iridescent being was using its beak and claws to manipulate the environmental controls inside its habitat. "Incredible," Dr. Kira gasped, pausing in her work. "It's not just reacting to the crisis, it's actively problem-solving." Dr. Alara nodded, her mind racing. "Work with it. If it can understand our systems, it might be able to help us stabilize the other habitats." Through a combination of the team's expertise and the avian creature's unexpected assistance, they managed to bring the environmental systems back under control. As the alarms finally fell silent, Dr. Alara leaned against a console, exhaustion etched on her face. Her respite was short-lived as her communicator chirped urgently. "Dr. Alara," a voice crackled, "you're needed back in the medical bay immediately. Raymond and Raya are regaining consciousness, but their condition is evolving." In the medical bay, Raymond's eyes fluttered open. His vision seemed sharper, colors more vibrant. He turned his head, finding Raya in the adjacent bed. Her eyes were open too, darting rapidly as if reading an invisible text. "Raya," he thought, reaching out with his mind. "Raymond," her mental voice replied, clearer and stronger than ever. "Something's changed. I can see the station's systems, the flow of data. It's like I'm connected to everything. Before Raymond could respond, Dr. Alara burst into the room. She quickly scanned their readings, her expression a mix of awe and concern. Your transformations are continuing, she explained, her voice tight. Raymond, your physical structure is now comparable to peak Orion physiology. Raya, your neural patterns suggest significantly enhanced cognitive abilities. We need to run more tests to understand the full extent of these changes. As the medical team prepared for another round of examinations, Captain Strom's voice came over the station-wide communication system. Attention all personnel. Long-range sensors have detected a large fleet of unknown origin entering our star system. All non-essential personnel are to report to secure areas immediately. Defense teams, prepare for potential engagement. Dr. Ilara's face paled as she looked at Raymond and Raya. We need to get you both stable and functional, she said, her voice filled with tenacity. Something tells me we're going to need every advantage we can get. Outside the medical bay, the station hummed with increased activity as crew members rushed to their assigned posts. In the command center, Ambassador Voss stood before a holographic display of the approaching fleet, her face set in unwavering persistence as she prepared to face yet another crisis that could determine the fate of the Convergence Project and the delicate balance of interstellar relations. As she prepared to face yet another crisis that could determine the fate of the Convergence Project and the delicate balance of interstellar politics. The station's alarms blared to life, bathing the corridors in pulsing red light. Ambassador Voss's communicator chirped urgently, displaying a priority message from the long-range sensor array. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. Attention all personnel, Captain Strom's voice echoed through the station-wide communication system. A large fleet of unknown origin has entered our star system. All non-essential personnel report to secure areas immediately. Defense teams, prepare for potential engagement. Ambassador Voss sprinted toward the command center, her mind racing with possibilities and strategies. As she entered the bustling hub of activity, a massive holographic display dominated the center of the room, showing the approaching fleet's position relative to the station. Status report, she demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. A young ensign turned from his console, his face pale. Ambassador, we're detecting over 100 ships of various configurations. Many of them don't match any known designs in our database. Voss nodded, her expression grim. Activate all defense systems and move our allied ships into defensive formations. We need to buy time to assess the situation. As the station hummed with increased activity, Voss tapped her communicator. This is Ambassador Voss. I'm calling an emergency meeting of all faction representatives. Report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. In the medical bay, Dr. Alara worked feverishly over Raymond and Raya's prone forms. Their vital signs fluctuated wildly on the monitors, neural patterns spiking in ways she had never seen before. Doctor, a nurse called out. Their brainwave activity is off the charts. It's as if they're processing massive amounts of information simultaneously. Ilara nodded, her antennae twitching with concern. Their hybrid physiology is adapting to the convergence network overload. We need to stabilize their neural pathways before permanent damage occurs. She turned to her team, issuing rapid-fire orders. Prepare a series of targeted neurotransmitter inhibitors. We'll administer them in controlled bursts to reduce the neural stress. As the medical team scrambled to prepare the treatment, Ilara's gaze fell on Raymond and Raya's intertwined hands. Even in their unconscious state, their connection remained unbroken. In the depths of space, Captain Strom's pursuit vessel emerged from the dense asteroid field, debris pinging off its hull. His communicator crackled to life with the station's urgent recall order. Helm, plot the fastest course back to the convergence station, Strom ordered, his voice tense. Push the engines to their limits. We can't afford to be absent for whatever's coming. The ship's engines flared to life, accelerating rapidly as it navigated the treacherous field. Behind it, the smoldering remains of the Chimera Syndicate's hidden base faded into the distance, the retrieved genetic samples secured in the vessel's hold. Back at the station, Ambassador Voss stood before the assembled faction representatives in Conference Room Alpha. The atmosphere was thick with tension as she addressed the group. We face an unprecedented situation, Voss began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. A fleet of unknown origin approaches, representing species we believed extinct or mythical. Our actions in the coming hours may shape the future of galactic relations for generations to come. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A progenitor representative floated forward, its energy form pulsing with urgency. We have analyzed the fleet's energy signatures. It communicated directly into the minds of those present. The technology bears similarities to that used in the earliest convergence facilities. Voss nodded, absorbing the implications. Then it's possible these beings have connections to the original architects of the convergence project. We must approach this situation with both caution and openness. As the representatives debated their next moves, alarms sounded from the containment area. Dr. Kira's voice came through on the communications system, breathless with excitement and concern. The ancient species are reacting to the approaching fleet, she reported. The avian creature is producing complex vocalizations we can't interpret. It's almost as if it's trying to communicate with the incoming ships. Voss's mind raced, connecting the pieces of this cosmic puzzle. Dr. Kira, continue monitoring the ancient species. Their behavior may provide crucial insights. In the medical bay, Raymond's eyes snapped open, his gaze intense and focused. Beside him, Raya gasped awake, her fingers tightening around his hand. Ambassador, Raymond called out, his voice hoarse but urgent. We need to speak with you immediately. We've seen the truth about the Convergence Project. Dr. Ilera hurried to their side, her medical scanner whirring as she assessed their condition. Your neural pathways have stabilized, but your hybrid physiology has undergone significant changes. We need to run more tests before... There's no time, Raya interrupted, sitting up despite the doctor's protests. The fleet approaching the station, they're not our enemies. They're the key to understanding everything. As Raymond and Raya shared their vision of an ancient conflict and abandoned convergence facilities, the engineering team made a breakthrough with the portable Nexus defense mechanism. Chief Engineer Zora's voice crackled over the communication system. Captain Strom, Ambassador Voss, we've successfully integrated a miniaturized energy core into the device. We have a functional prototype ready for deployment. Strom's voice responded immediately. Excellent work. Begin production of multiple units. We'll equip key defensive positions around the station. The station's communication array suddenly lit up with activity as a complex series of signals penetrated their outer sensor perimeter. The incoming transmission defied conventional decryption methods, its contents a mixture of genetic data and historical records. Ambassador Voss, acting on instinct and the advice of the progenitors, initiated a response using a hybrid of modern protocols and ancient convergence communication methods. The result was instantaneous, a tentative link established with the lead ship of the incoming fleet. As the Galactic Genetic Accord representatives granted Voss emergency negotiation powers, Raymond and Rhea volunteered to act as intermediaries. Their unique genetic makeup and shared vision of the convergence network positioned them as ideal bridges between known space and the approaching coalition of ancient species. Dr. Alara and her team quickly prepared a secure meeting area, equipping it with advanced medical monitoring systems and biosecurity protocols. Captain Strom deployed security teams armed with the new portable defense mechanisms at strategic locations throughout the facility. The station held its breath as the lead ship of the unknown fleet approached the designated meeting point. Ambassador Voss stood at the airlock, flanked by Raymond and Raya, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and tenacity. The sound of docking clamps engaging echoed through the hull, followed by the hiss of pressure equalization. As the airlock cycled open, Ambassador Voss took a deep breath, preparing to make first contact with beings that could hold the keys to the true origins of the Convergence Project and the fate of countless species across the galaxy. The station stood on the precipice of a new era in interstellar relations, the potential for unprecedented cooperation or devastating conflict hanging in the balance. The inner door of the airlock slid open, revealing a shimmering field of energy that slowly dissipated. As the mist cleared, Ambassador Voss found herself face to face with a delegation of beings unlike any she had encountered before. At the forefront stood a tall, luminescent figure, its form seeming to shift and flow like liquid starlight. It stepped forward, its voice resonating with a melodic quality that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. Greetings, Ambassador Voss of the Convergence Station. I am Zara, emissary of the galactic progenitors. Voss's diplomatic training kicked in, pushing aside her awe. Welcome, Emissary Zara. We are honored by your presence. As Zara's delegation moved into the station, alarms began to blare. Security systems flashed warnings of unidentified energy signatures emanating from the visitors. Captain Strom's voice crackled over the comm system. Ambassador, we're detecting unusual energy patterns. Security teams are moving into position. Dr. Alara rushed forward, her medical scanner whirring. We need to establish a quarantine zone immediately. These energy signatures could have unforeseen biological effects. Within minutes, the docking area was transformed into a temporary containment zone. Shimmering force fields sprang up, isolating the visitors while allowing communication to continue. Zara's form rippled, a gesture that seemed to convey both understanding and amusement. Your caution is commendable, but unnecessary. We pose no biological threat to your station or its inhabitants. As Dr. Alara's team began non-invasive scans of the visitors, Raymond and Raya suddenly stiffened, their eyes glazing over. They spoke in unison, their voices carrying an otherworldly resonance. The convergence, it's more than we thought, a safeguard against a cosmic threat. Ambassador Voss turned to them, her antennae twitching with curiosity. What do you mean? Raymond blinked, coming back to himself. We saw it. The true purpose of the Convergence Project. It's not just about preserving genetic diversity. It's a shield against something the progenitors foresaw. Zara nodded solemnly. Your hybrid friends speak the truth. We are the descendants of those who created the Convergence Project. Our ancestors went into self-imposed exile millennia ago, fearing the misuse of their technology. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled Galactic Genetic Accord representatives. Murmurs of disbelief and excitement rippled through the crowd. Captain Strom's team, newly returned from their mission, took up defensive positions around the meeting area. They activated the portable defense mechanisms, creating a controlled environment for the negotiations. Suddenly, a piercing cry echoed through the station's communication system. The avian creature in the containment area had become increasingly agitated, its vocalizations growing more complex and urgent. Dr. Kira's voice came through, breathless with excitement. Ambassador, we've made a breakthrough in decoding its language. It's trying to warn us about something, a hidden danger within the progenitor delegation. Before anyone could react, Raymond and Raya's bodies began to emit a faint, pulsating energy field. The station's sensors flickered and distorted around them. Dr. Alara rushed to their side, her medical scanner beeping frantically. Their hybrid physiology is undergoing another change. We need to contain this energy field before it interferes with critical systems. As the medical team worked to stabilize Raymond and Raya, Zara stepped forward, a data crystal materializing in her hand. As a gesture of good faith, we offer you this. The complete genetic archives of thousands of extinct species. The Galactic Genetic Accord representatives erupted into heated debate. The implications of such vast genetic information were staggering. Zara continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. There is more. A network of hidden convergence facilities exists across the galaxy, far more extensive than you know. We offer to reactivate these facilities and share our advanced technology in exchange for a seat on your accord and unrestricted access to all current genetic research. Before Ambassador Voss could respond, alarms blared once again. A junior officer rushed forward, his face pale. Ambassador, long-range sensors have detected a massive energy surge from a nearby star system. The signature matches a fully activated convergence facility. Raymond and Raya, their connection to the convergence network now stronger than ever, gasped in unison. It's starting, Raya said, her voice tight with urgency. An activation sequence that could affect all known facilities simultaneously. Raymond turned to Ambassador Voss, his eyes wide with fear. We have to act now. If we don't stop this, it could lead to uncontrolled genetic manipulation on a galactic scale. The engineering team, led by Chief Engineer Zora, sprang into action. We can modify the station's nexus to act as a control hub for the entire network, Zora shouted over the chaos. But we'll need time. As the engineering team raced against the clock, Captain Strom approached Ambassador Voss, his voice low. Ambassador, we've uncovered evidence suggesting a faction within the progenitor delegation may have ulterior motives. We need to proceed with caution. Voss nodded, her mind racing as she tried to navigate the increasingly complex diplomatic situation. She turned to address Zara, choosing her words carefully. Emissary, we appreciate your offer and the valuable information you've shared. However, the activation of hidden facilities without our knowledge raises concerns. We need to establish clear protocols and safeguards before proceeding further. As she spoke, Dr. Alara's team made a breakthrough in stabilizing Raymond and Raya's evolving physiology. The couple's energy field began to stabilize, their connection to the convergence network becoming more controlled. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station with renewed urgency. Multiple convergence facilities across the galaxy were powering up simultaneously, their energy signatures burning bright against the backdrop of space. Ambassador Voss looked around the room, taking in the faces of her team, the progenitor delegation, and the Galactic Genetic Accord representatives. The weight of countless species' futures pressed down upon her shoulders. I'm calling for an emergency session of the Galactic Genetic Accord, she announced, her voice steady, despite the chaos surrounding them. The true scope of the Convergence project is only now coming to light, and we must act decisively. As the various factions prepared for the emergency session, tension hung thick in the air. The future of the star's genetic legacy hung in the balance, with the potential for either unprecedented cooperation or devastating conflict looming on the horizon. With a deep breath, Ambassador Voss activated the station-wide communication system. Attention all personnel and delegates. This is Ambassador Voss. In light of recent events, I am convening an emergency session of the Galactic Genetic Accord. All representatives are to report to the main conference chamber immediately. As the station buzzed with activity, Raymond and Raya stood side by side, their bodies pulsing with a soft, ethereal glow. Dr. Alara approached them, her medical scanner whirring. Your hybrid physiology has stabilized, she said, her voice a mix of awe and professional curiosity. How do you feel? Raymond flexed his fingers, watching as tiny sparks of energy danced between them. Connected, he replied. It's as if we can feel the entire convergence network. Raya nodded, her eyes distant. We can help. We can interface with the Nexus, monitor the galaxy-wide activation of the facilities. Dr. Ilar hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right, but I want you both under constant medical supervision. As Raymond and Raya were led to the Nexus control room, Captain Strom gathered his security team. His voice was low and urgent as he addressed them. We have credible intel suggesting a rogue faction within the progenitor delegation. Our priority is to isolate and neutralize this threat without compromising the diplomatic situation. Understood? The team nodded, their faces set with perseverance. They moved swiftly through the station's corridors, their footsteps barely audible over the persistent blare of alarms. In the main conference chamber, Ambassador Voss stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Genetic Accord. The room crackled with tension as she began to speak. Esteemed colleagues, we stand at a critical juncture. The activation of hidden convergence facilities across the galaxy poses both unprecedented opportunities and grave dangers. We must act swiftly and decisively to... Her words were cut short by a commotion at the chamber's entrance. Captain Strom burst in, his uniform singed and a thin line of blood trickling from a cut above his eye. Ambassador, he called out, his voice carrying over the startled murmurs of the delegates. We've neutralized the threat. Zara's second-in-command and several conspirators are in custody. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Zara, the luminescent progenitor emissary, stepped forward, her form shimmering with impossibly strong emotion. This is impossible, she said, her melodic voice tinged with disbelief. My people would never. Captain Strom cut her off, his voice grim. They confessed under questioning. Their plan was to use the reactivated convergence network to forcibly upgrade all sentient species according to their vision of genetic perfection. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates shouted accusations and demands for action. Ambassador Voss raised her hands, calling for order. "This changes nothing about the crisis at hand," she said firmly. "We must still address the cascading activation of convergence facilities. Emissary Zara, will you and the loyal members of your delegation assist us?" Zara's form pulsed with a brilliant light as she nodded. "We will do everything in our power to help. The actions of these renegades do not represent the will of the progenitors." In the Nexus control room, Raymond and Raya stood before a shimmering holographic display of the galaxy. Countless points of light pulsed in the synchronization, each representing an active convergence facility. "The energy buildup is reaching critical levels," Chief Engineer Zora reported, her fingers flying over the control panels. "If we don't find a way to channel it safely, we could be looking at widespread genetic chaos across multiple star systems." Dr. Ilara burst into the room, followed by a group of progenitor scientists. "We've developed a method to channel the energy surge through the station's nexus," she announced breathlessly. "But it's risky. We need a living conduit to stabilize the flow." Raymond and Raya exchanged a look, an unspoken agreement passing between them. "We'll do it," Raymond said, stepping forward. "Our hybrid physiology makes us uniquely suited for this task." "Are you certain?" Dr. Ilara asked, concern etched on her face. "The strain on your bodies will be immense." Raya took Raymond's hand, their fingers intertwining. "We're sure," she said softly. "This is why we were created, why we found each other. We can save countless lives." As the medical and engineering teams prepared a specially designed chamber, Ambassador Voss's voice came over the communication system. "Attention all personnel. We have reached an agreement with the progenitor delegation and the Galactic Genetic Accord. Proceed with the energy channeling operation. May the stars guide us all." Raymond and Raya entered the chamber, lying side by side on sleek metallic beds. As the transparent dome closed over them, they reached out, their hands clasping tightly. "Ready?" Raymond asked, his voice barely a whisper. Raya nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Together," she replied. Dr. Ilara initiated the sequence, and a brilliant surge of energy flooded the chamber. Raymond and Raya's bodies arched, their eyes flying open as their consciousness expanded beyond the confines of the station, beyond the limits of their physical forms. In an instant, they were everywhere and nowhere, their minds touching every active convergence facility across the vast expanse of the galaxy. They saw the genetic structure of entire species laid bare before them, a tapestry of unimaginable complexity and beauty. With gentle, precise movements of their shared consciousness, Raymond and Raya began the meticulous process of stabilizing the active facilities. They wove through the fabric of genetic information, preventing uncontrolled manipulations, while preserving the valuable data and capabilities of each installation. As they worked, patterns began to emerge, hidden genetic templates left behind by the original convergence creators. Within these ancient strands of code lay solutions to genetic disorders that had plagued species for millennia, including the long-standing fertility issues between humans and Orions. In the control room, Dr. Ilara and the progenitor scientists watched in awe as data streamed across their screens, unlocking secrets of genetic manipulation that they had only dreamed of understanding. Ambassador Voss, observing from the chamber's viewing gallery, turned to Zara. "This is a moment of unprecedented opportunity," she said, her voice filled with quiet drive. "We must ensure that this knowledge is used for the benefit of all species, not just a select few." Zara's form shimmered in agreement. "Perhaps it is time for a new governing body," she suggested, "one that can oversee the ethical use and development of genetic technology across the galaxy." As Raymond and Raya continued their work, their bodies glowing with otherworldly energy, the seeds of a new era of galactic cooperation were being sown. The convergence network, once abandoned and feared, was becoming the foundation for a future where the boundaries between species might finally begin to fade. In the chamber, Raymond and Raya's hands remained clasped, their fingers intertwined, a symbol of unity amidst the swirling cosmic energy that flowed through them. As they guided the galaxy towards a new dawn, their bond grew stronger, a testament to the potential for harmony between even the most diverse of beings. The station hummed with renewed purpose, its corridors filled with the excited chatter of scientists and diplomats alike. In the heart of the Nexus, two hybrid beings continued their cosmic dance, weaving together the genetic destiny of countless worlds.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.